stronger than ever in the 116th Congress. When we stood here 2 years ago, we faced a daunting electoral map, the worst in decades. And we faced difficult questions about how best to serve the people with such an unconventional president in the White House. 2 years later, let's take stock. Thanks to the unity of our caucus, we beat back Republican efforts to repeal health care. 30 million people have health care because of this caucus. And the Republican assault on the health care system continues. They continue to pursue their destructive lawsuit to eliminate protections for pre-existing conditions. Costs are made higher and higher. Coverage gets diminished every day because of Republican sabotage. Prescription drugs are out of reach for too many, and the GOP knives are still out for Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid. Republicans jammed through a biased tax bill that rewarded the wealthy and the powerful special interests, but we Democrats were unified in opposition. We made it clear day after day after day that the Republicans were the party that stands for the rich and for the wealthy special interests. And we were the party on the side of middle-class Americans and those struggling to get there. Republicans predicted the tax bill would save their party, lead to enormous victories in the midterms. Turns out they were afraid to even talk about it. In almost all of their campaigns, they didn't mention it. That's because it was so unpopular. And I believe there's a sea change. For 30 years, the powerful, wealthy few who have dictated tax policy on the Republican side, cut the taxes of the rich, and that's a great thing for America, that's over. I think our message, our focus, has put a knife through the heart of that argument. You won't see the Republicans doing that very much anymore. What they did do is explode the deficit. As a result, people saw it as selfish, narrowly focused, dangerous, and irresponsible. And so, with the Senate map wildly tilted in Republicans' favor, we're at worst only one seat worse off than we were when we stood here 2 years ago. And if Bill Nelson wins, which I believe he has a very good chance of doing, we'll be even. When all the votes are counted in Florida, we could be just where we started at the beginning of the 115th Congress, with 48 members, even facing the worst map that we've ever had. We were defending 10 seats that Donald Trump won. Much to the surprise of the prognosticators who thought we'd lose a whole bunch of seats, we didn't. But that's the past. Where do Senate Democrats go from here? We're going to be relentlessly focused on the issues that matter to the people. First and foremost, lower health care costs, provide better, stronger coverage. From prescription drugs to premiums, we Democrats are going to continue to press our Republican colleagues for better, more comprehensive health care rather than send costs skyward and help the insurance companies and the pharmaceutical industry. We Democrats believe in a real infrastructure bill with real direct and robust federal investments that will rebuild our crumbling roads and bridges, expand high-speed internet access in rural areas, and put millions, 10 million Americans to work in good-paying jobs, including fields like clean energy along the way. And we need to clean up Washington in a real way. Rather than paying lip service to the idea of draining the swamp, which is all Republicans have done, they paid lip service and made it worse, led by President Trump making it worse. We are going to fight hard to clean this swamp. The Trump administration is the most ethically challenged in history. From the president to his cabinet, and congressional Republicans have backed up that swamp all the way. We're going to fight for real reforms to loosen the grip of special interests in Washington and to let everybody vote. Everybody. Not stand in the way of people voting, which is a despicable, despicable thing for people to do. It's against the wellspring of our democracy. We hope our colleagues in the House will have success in passing bills like this. We will be relentless here in the Senate in pressuring Senator McConnell and Republicans in the Senate to put them on the floor or pay the consequences. The American people voted for Democrats last week on the strength of our ideas. Senate Democrats are committed to fighting to make those ideas a reality in this upcoming Congress.
Schumer, with respect to Florida, sir?
Yes.
I know yesterday you appeared with Mr. Nelson.
Yes.
Can you share with us some of the conversations maybe you've had with him? What are his thoughts on this?
Yeah, well, Bill Nelson is strong as could be. He believes, I believe, he's won a majority of the votes. And as long as they're counted, he will continue being senator from Florida. The President Trump and Governor Scott have just lied. They've said there's fraud when their own Republican officials in Florida have said there's no fraud. They're trying to shut down the election because they're afraid of the consequences if they don't. In other words, a Nelson victory. That's what Bill believes. That's what I believe.
Do you feel as if those deadlines should be moved out?
Absolutely. Every vote should be counted. Those deadlines, you have to remember, were passed after the presidential election of 2000 because of the need to report to the Electoral College. We in the Senate don't have an Electoral College, and every vote ought to count. It is unconstitutional to say every vote should count in rural counties because they can count quickly, but every vote shouldn't count in the more urban and populated counties because it takes them longer to count the vote. Yes?
Do you think we could see a partial government shutdown in December, and what might be the big hang-up?
The Republicans are in charge. And if the government shuts down, it's on their back. Now, we want a couple of things.
All right, everyone, we're live in the newsroom here at Fox 5 DC. You're taking a look right now at Senator Chuck Schumer on the Hill talking about this Florida ballot recount. He's been touting ever since this sort of drama ensued that President Trump should stay out of this Florida recount. That election ballot recount is still ongoing. We have some live video of that coming in today. We've had it throughout the morning, and you can see Schumer right here just spouting those same words to the media and to some of his viewers there on the Hill. So this is live right now in Capitol Hill, and we'll be back with some more live news for you on this Fox 5 Live today, Wednesday, November 14th.
In a way where each side gave, but the government was funded, and many of our priorities, veterans, education, infrastructure, opioid, were funded in a robust way. And as long as Trump doesn't interfere, we can move the government forward.
Senator Schumer, are Democrats willing to give more than $1.6 billion for the border wall that the president wants?
The Democrats and Republicans came to the $1.6 billion agreement. It is tough security. It is sensors. It is drones. It is roads. It is help at the border in a far more effective way than the wall. And we believe Democrats and Republicans should stick with their agreement and not let President Trump interfere. Every time he interferes, it gets bollocksed up. Yes.
We now enter the time period where a number of members of your caucus, including some of the folks standing around you right now, are considering whether they want to run for president. How does that affect the dynamic
The bottom line is that our caucus is unified. People have re-elections coming up. People may want to run for higher office. It has never stood in the way of our unity. Every time we have needed unity, every one of the people in this caucus, whether they're running for re-election, running for a higher office, have stood with us, and that will continue, I am confident. Thank you, everybody.
Be up here, board member Steffi, y'all should be up here. Congresswoman Fudge should be up here. Charles Williams, Detroit, Nina, and I'll be acknowledging chapter leaders all throughout the day. It is my honor and privilege. Let me say this, down through the years, whether we had the majority of the House Democrat or minority, I cannot recall a time that we had an issue that I would call Miss Congresswoman Pelosi that she was not available to meet right away, to respect what we wanted to say, and we usually left with her out shouting me on whatever the issue was. So she was at our national convention in New York this year, so it was no surprise when she said, even though this is the beginning, I will come by and speak to the delegates from National Action Network. So I do not want the media to misinterpret her being here as something unusual. It is something we expect because we've had that kind of relationship with her down through the years. Now I bring you the House Minority Leader that flipped the majority last Tuesday, Nancy Pelosi.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Reverend Sharpton, for the invitation to be here, for your kind words of introduction, and once again, to be in touch. It was my honor to be with so many of you in New York for the convention, and here on any number of occasions at the behest of the distinguished Reverend Sharpton. Thank you for your leadership. Yes, here we are in the majority. I'm honored to be here. I'm honored to be here with Congresswoman Fudge, with Congressman Espelot, with Congresswoman Yvette Clarke, with Congresswoman Robin Kelly of New York, and with the great senator from New York, Kirsten Gillibrand. As we open this session, let us just find our common ground as to how we go forward. First, let us recognize that we achieved a great victory. In a gerrymandered, voter-suppressed map, we were able to sweep up to almost 40 seats so far and count up to 40 seats for the Democrats in the majority. That would not have been possible without the community, the African-American community coming out so strongly across the country. And thank you, Reverend Sharpton, for the strong role, there you go, that you played. Second of all, let's recognize and applaud the fact that we have record numbers of people of color in our caucus now and record number of women. We have always been, for a long time now, a majority caucus, the House Democrats, of women, people of color, and LGBTQ, over 50%. Now we're probably over 60%. That's a stark difference from the other side of the aisle. We are America. We look like America. America is represented in the Congress very fully. It's interesting that it's 30 of the new members. We'll have a low of 57, maybe 60 new members. 30 of them are women. Over half of the people elected are women. And this is particularly meaningful to us because we are observing the 50th anniversary of the election of the first African-American woman to Congress, Shirley Chisholm. That's an appropriate way to recognize her success, her courage. Imagine the courage it took then, and now it still takes courage. Just to talk about a few things. We ran on an agenda of for the people, lowering health care costs by reducing the cost of prescription drugs, protecting the pre-existing condition benefit, etc. We ran on for the people to raise paychecks by building the infrastructure of our country, and to do so in a way that involves the full participation of our communities. And we ran on integrity of government, and that is H.R. 1, the bill to lower the role of money in politics, increase the voice of people in politics. And part of H.R. 1, which we hope will be one of the earliest pieces of legislation to come from the committees to the floor, is to pass Terry Sewell's Voting Rights Act right at the start of Congress. As we do this, we will do it with openness and respect for all points of view. We will do it with bipartisanship, strive for bipartisanship so that we can get a presidential signature, but to appeal to the public that we are trying to find a common ground. And then the third is to remember the vows of our founders, our guidance of our founders, e pluribus unum. They couldn't imagine how many we'd be from any one. They couldn't imagine how many or how different, but they knew that we had to strive for unity and not go there to divide, but to unite. And we do believe that our faith gives us the common ground to do that, because faith is what gives people hope. People say to me all the time, and I shared this at the convention, people say, where is hope? Where can I find hope? I say, hope is sitting where it always has been, right there between faith and love. People have hope because they believe in the goodness of others, and we have to make sure we have a path for that to happen. And one way we want to do it in the Congress is we have a diversity initiative to say to all these new chairmen coming in what we said when we had the majority before, but now we have a big majority that with the resources to make a difference, we want to see diversity at the highest levels of all of the staffs, be it committee or personal staffs in the Congress. It has been met with great positive response by our chairman, by our members, by our newcomers, so that all of the people who are making decisions here, and staffs are very important, our colleagues will agree, will be in line to perhaps run for office themselves, have standing on the issues to take those values to the private sector. So for these and other reasons, certainly we will have a gun bill. We asked them for it, so now we will have to have it. And it talks about what happens, and Robin Kelly has been a champion on this. It's not as horrible as these mass murders are, and they're horrible. Assault on our country's character. What happens every night across America is also an assault on our character, and Robin has been a champion in that regard. So it is with great knowledge of our issues, vision on what we have. Reverend, I'm just going to close with this one thing, because I think this is very important for how we go forward across the board, across all caucuses and the rest. When President Obama was president, and don't we miss President Obama? What a blessing to our country he and Michelle have been. I just want to say this. So he came in with a very depressed economy. There was a deep recession, almost a depression in our country. And so we did what we had to do in order to pass the bill, the American Recovery and Reinvestment Act. We did all kinds of things, the health care bill, to help improve the financial situation of American families. But because the economy was so bad, it was hard for us to take gigantic steps that we can do now. President brags about how good the economy is, part of it because of what we did then, part of the private sector initiatives and the rest. But it enables us to say, we declare our independence from the income inequality in our country. We declare our independence from the disparity of income from the CEO to the worker. We're going forward to reward work, so we're going to have a vision. It's going to be visionary on how we go forward with these initiatives. And they have to be about, again, worker training, education, and the rest, as well as what we promised in our For the People agenda. As we have to make a difference, because this comes back to people of faith. This is an immorality in our country, that we have an economy that perpetuates disparity in income to this extent. So we have to work very hard to do that. We have great chairmen from the community. Maxine is going to be in there doing the fight on housing in a very strong way. Benny Thompson will be in there fighting to stop domestic terrorism in our country, gun issues and the rest from his committee. Elijah Cummings, oh my gosh, aren't we proud of Elijah Cummings? Bobby Scott will be working on the education and workforce issues. We're changing the name of his committee to Education and Labor. And he, Mr. Espelata, commented on him this morning, talking about making sure that we have worker development so that people are trained for the jobs that are there and to get higher pay for them. Who else do we have on it? We have, the list goes on in terms of our chairman, who will be serving us so well from the people of color community. On here, of course, Robin Kelly, I mentioned, a champion in so many ways, but a real leader, a part of our task force on gun violence protection. Yvette Clark on the Energy and Commerce Committee, a real champion to end the environmental injustices that exist in our country. That's such an important point. I mentioned Mr. Espelata in that regard as well, and for one thing, just I'm just naming one thing, but on the Agriculture Committee, Marsha Fudge being a fighter for having nutrition for our children as something a decent country does, and not as something that we have to fight over. So a real fighter on food stamps and the rest for America's children. She had to leave. She'll leave. But everyone is making such a tremendous contribution to all of this. We invite your comments. Your criticisms are always welcome, but also to think in entrepreneurial, bigger ways. We're going to be visionary. We're going to be unifying. We're going to be healing. We're going to be transparent in how we do this. We're going to be respectful of other views. But we are going to, we're going to try to find our common ground where we can. We have a responsibility to do that. But where we can't, stand our ground like a rock. That's what Thomas Jefferson advised us to do. So in any event, thank you. Thank you for helping take back America. People all over the place are calling me, writing on the airports here, there. Thank you for saving America. I give those thanks to you. Thank you for saving America. Reverend Sharpton, thank you for saving America. Thank you. Thank you.
Give a hand, Nancy Pelosi, Congresswoman.
All right, so that was Nancy Pelosi live at the National Action Network conference here in D.C. It's a conference ongoing for a couple days now, and we have that feed coming in. Democrats discussing the civil rights movement in America, and I wanted to make sure we kind of dip into whatever we have coming in that's live. So we also have this live look here down in Florida, guys. This ballot recount is serious. It is still on. You've heard the Democrats kind of talking about President Trump meddling in this and tweeting about it. It's still ongoing. You can see this is the official sort of room where they're having everybody do the reports and what's happening with that recount. So it's still going on. And then meanwhile, we have a third shot here of this stakeout in Congress as people come up to the podium and discuss various topics. We're going to make sure we have that as well. But I want to let you know about the headline that you're probably reading. Yes, we are talking about some wintry mix possibly coming into the DMV area tomorrow morning. We're going to have some meteorologists in these chairs to chat about that in a little bit. So stay on with us here for more of that live coverage. So let's kind of dip back into this conference. We're going to also see what else is happening. I'm going to show you some of the top stories from the DMV region and around the country as we go into this live stream for today. So stay with us.
Rick Scott is flying to Washington tonight and plans to attend Senate Republican leadership votes tomorrow. Too soon to say whether he and opponent Senator Bill Nelson cross paths, but they continue with their cross words. Nelson, accompanied by Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer, repeated his mantra, every vote must count.
Sadly, it's become clear that my opponent isn't interested in making sure that every lawful vote is counted. He's thrown around words like voter fraud with no proof.
Schumer even suggested that state-mandated deadlines for completing the recount should be eliminated. No wonder why.
The more time that passes since Election Day, the better things keep looking for Democrats.
It's the same reason Governor Scott's team has filed 6 lawsuits to date, all broadly intended to stem the flood of late contested votes, most coming from heavily Democratic Broward and Palm Beach counties.
We have a trust issue in this county. We have a trust issue in this process, and we need to do something now before it is too late.
Pressure continues to build on Broward and Palm Beach's supervisors of elections, Brenda Snipes and Susan Booker. The president tweeting today, quote, "When will Bill Nelson concede in Florida? The characters running Broward and Palm Beach voting will not be able to, quote, find enough votes. Too much spotlight on them now." A day after former Florida Republican Governor Jeb Bush called for Snipes be removed from her office following the recounts, she hinted at removing herself while complimenting herself for a job well done.
But it is time to move on to let someone else provide a credible election product for our voters.
Today revealed more irregularities. The Miami Herald reported it has been deluged with absentee voter calls from Broward, Palm Beach, and Miami-Dade counties, complaining of ballots, quote, not arriving late, being returned but apparently getting lost in the mail, or not tabulated well after Election Day. While that plays out, the unofficial winner in the governor's race, Ron DeSantis, is setting up a transition office in the state capitol and is sending out pictures to prove it. And late today, lawyers for the Senator Nelson campaign filed a lawsuit in federal court seeking to indefinitely extend the deadline for the recount in all 67 Florida counties. A spokesman for Governor Scott calls that outrageous and notes that the Supreme Court has affirmed such deadlines. In Tallahassee, Florida, Doug McElway, Fox News. Late today, lawyers for the Senator Nelson campaign
and more than 25,000 new high-paying jobs over the coming decade with room to grow. And I'm here to confirm that New York will be home to one of Amazon's new headquarters and more than 25,000 new high-paying jobs over the coming decade with room to grow. I'd like
Amazon making it official. An HQ2 is coming here to Vernon Boulevard in Long Island City, Queens.
In many ways, this is a perfect location, and there's a lot happening in Queens.
This will be the site of a 6 million to 8 million square foot headquarters, a tech startup incubator, public green space, and a public school.
This is up to a $3.6 billion investment by Amazon, 25,000 to 40,000 direct jobs, average salary of over $150,000, but there are then indirect jobs that are always created. That's estimated 107,000 jobs. Total economic impact, $186 billion.
The state is offering performance-based incentives and tax credits that could top $1.7 billion if Amazon does in fact create 40,000 jobs. Governor Cuomo calling the return on investment unprecedented.
So the revenue to incentive ratio is 9-to-1. That is the highest rate of return for an economic incentive program that the state has ever offered.
Mayor de Blasio calling this a major financial win for New York City as well.
For the city alone, we project $13.5 billion in tax revenues over 25 years.
In the first year, Amazon has committed to 700 new jobs, attracted to New York City because of its strong pool of software developers. But the mayor says this will create jobs for everyone, from union construction workers to current students.
We're going to have an opportunity here for tens of thousands of New Yorkers, everyday New Yorkers, kids who come up through our public schools, kids who go to our community colleges and our four-year colleges to have opportunity at Amazon.
Let's do it.
All right. Well, Amazon's certainly the talk of the town yesterday in New York and DC, but today in the DMV, we're here with Mike Thomas.
Yeah, I'm back, baby.
Meteorologist, because we got winter weather on the way, and you guys have probably come on the stream to see this. You saw it in our headline. If you're on Facebook, welcome. If you're on YouTube, welcome to the stream. We're going to have Mike break it down, what we're expecting in the morning hours and kind of this first little taste of winter.
Yeah, I mean, it's surprising. We don't do it often. If you caught this on Facebook earlier, I did a little one earlier, but we do have new stuff new data, which actually sort of agrees with our forecast. So
okay.
all good things to check up on. But we don't do snow, accumulating snows anyways, too often in November. We haven't done it since '96 was the last time we accumulated something throughout the month of November in DC. We've had flakes before, and out to the west of town, they've gotten accumulating snows.
Yeah.
But your big ones, your inches of snow in November, haven't done that since 1989, and then we had the big one in 1987 that got almost a foot in DC. Totally different situation tomorrow as opposed to that 1987 case where it was like a surprise blizzard.
Weird.
That won't happen tomorrow.
Okay, that didn't even show up in it was just a weird surprise.
Very different forecasting back then. If they had the same tools we have available to us today, they would have seen it easily.
Okay.
But they didn't.
So interesting.
So yeah, but you just wouldn't expect it in November because we don't usually do it in November. Still, morning commute tomorrow looks like a mess. Whether you get stuff sticking or not, it's probably coming down right around. It moves in right around morning commute time. 5 to 7 window is what it looks like.
Okay.
And then you got problems. So
I want to remind you, as you're on YouTube and Facebook, let us know if you have questions for Mike, kind of certain areas that it might hit. Let us know. We'll answer questions.
Yeah, and hopefully I'll answer most of them right now. As you know what, let's flash over the iNet, and we will take.
All right,
this is the latest data. It just came in, like literally within the last hour or so, even since the last time we were up. So we're looking at what's called the GFS. This is the American version of things, which had been showing a decent amount of cold air and some snow in earlier runs, but this new run. See the purple and pink? That's 7 o'clock tomorrow morning. It's now even kind of struggling to get it in there. That's your line right now. It's struggling to bring it up at 7. So if you're an early riser and you're getting up at 5, 6 o'clock tomorrow morning, you're in Maryland or right around DC, you look out your window, you might not see all that much either coming down or certainly not seeing a whole lot on the ground. Don't expect that when you wake up tomorrow morning, unless you live in western and southwestern portions of Virginia, where it's likely you're going to wake up to a coating of ice and sleet.
Whoa.
And they'll have problems. That's I-81 corridor out there, right at the foot of the mountains. That's kind of where the jackpot will be with this, even though by jackpot, I still don't think we're looking at a ton of snow here. This gets us out to, it skips a couple beats. This hops into the afternoon, and you see by the afternoon, rain has moved in. That green, that yellow, that's heavy rain getting into D.C. here. And then it's all freezing rain and sleet out to the mountains to the west. Mason-Dixon line up to the north, rain and sleet continues. But it's not, that model's not scary in terms of getting too much snow, too much sleet here.
Okay.
Hop over. I'll change models here. This is a new one that's still kind of coming in, but just came in a few minutes ago as well. This skips out to 6 o'clock in the morning, 7 o'clock in the morning, right there. DC's kind of right where my crosshairs are there. And you see the purple and a little bit of blue there. So maybe a little wave of flakes at the first half that gets here, right around 7. Sometime between 7 and 8 o'clock is when this one wants to move it into DC. That's a lot of purple and not a lot of blue. So that tells me, hey, it's more sleet versus snow.
Got it.
Okay.
You see that one little line of blue, but that doesn't matter.
But
it's mixed.
We'll see some snow coming down, I think, for a period of time, but not necessarily sticking, and it doesn't necessarily last that long. My opinion on this whole thing. And then you get out to the west, and all that pink, the pink is freezing rain. So you're dealing with icing situation out to the west. You're dealing with sleet here in the DC region. You see a little bit more blue trying to invade there across northern portions of Maryland, where it'll be a little colder in the morning. But here, DC, that is now getting you out to 9 o'clock in the morning, and or 10 o'clock in the morning, and you're trying already to change over to snow. Now, I'm looking basically right here at this chart, which is telling me the temperatures from the surface all the way up, and you're marginal. So, you're right on the edge of seeing snow and sleet continue here in DC. But at the same time, you've got warm air sneaking in above our heads. Not so much down at the surface where you and I are standing, but up, where planes are flying, or, in between where planes are flying and we're standing. You got warm air sneaking in, and the warmer that air is that sneaks in, the more likely we are to change it over a little faster. And this has the rain kind of moving in pretty quick throughout the late morning hours. And while snow and freezing rain continue for the highlands and the mountains northwest, I-81 corridor and, you know, the Mason-Dixon, here in D.C. we change it over to a very heavy and very cold rain. Could be some flash flooding concerns, particularly south and east, northern neck of Virginia, southern Maryland kind of areas there. But that's a lot of sleet and not a lot of snow. Now, Molly, I'll tell you this.
Yep.
Social media has been lighting up with maps that look a lot like this.
Okay.
Which are snowfall total maps.
Oh.
And look at some of these numbers that it's putting out. It's like
inches?
10 inches, 12 inches, right? That's a snowstorm.
Oh my
yeah?
goodness.
Here's the problem, Molly. All of that, everything you see there includes sleet as snow. Or freezing rain as
okay, so those numbers include what we just talked about, which is mostly sleet.
Which doesn't accumulate like snow accumulates.
Okay.
And
it melts.
Well, it sort of melts, but it's weather. Higher liquid content means you get runoff, essentially. And this is what it would look like if we had this situation in January or February. Problems in November, your ground's warm, so you're going to do some melting once it hits the ground. And you're not going to have what we call a 10-to-1 ratio. Usually when they do maps like this, 10-to-1 ratio means 1 inch of liquid equals 10 inches of snow. So that's the typical conversion calculation. The model itself doesn't spit out snow. We have to calculate it and get maps like this. When you do that, you get maps like this, but there's trouble.
People freak out.
You'll freak out.
See it.
If you see a map like this, you'll freak out. Now, you factor out the sleet. You say, hey, ground's a little warm, and you take into account that ratio is not going to be 10-to-1, and then you factor all that in, and you get a map that looks like this, which is a little bit more manageable.
And that looks like kind of what you just described, the mixture of what we're going to possibly see.
Right.
See a little bit of snow.
You see, there's nothing, even here in D.C., it's not even getting an inch of anything on the ground. And you have to go west. You know, maybe Upper Loudoun, Upper Montgomery might squeeze out an inch out of this. And then it's only got 2, 3, 4 inches in some of the hills out here to the far west. And now this is mostly through Thursday. There's a chance that these areas out here, in fact, there's a good chance that some of those areas out here are going to pick up another round Thursday night and Friday morning, but not so much areas west of the I-81, or I'm sorry, east of the I-81 corridors.
Okay.
Your jackpot is going to be out there, but I'm not expecting. I mean, you see there, I'm not expecting any jackpot totals out of this little system tomorrow. So that's our forecast from this morning, and based on all the stuff that just rolled in, I still feel really good about it. I mean, a grassy coating to maybe a slushy kind of mix here at DC I-95 areas west. And then a little bit more the farther west you go. And your issues tomorrow are not so much going to be amounts. You know, you're not going to get the kids out to play in it. You're not going to be sledding down the hill. We're not ready for that yet. The ground.
It's too warm.
It's too warm. You'll do some cooling. You'll cool things down a little bit, but things are just not ready to pile on the snow. And this isn't a type of situation where you can pile on the snow.
Right. I see some of you guys saying, I love snow, bring it on, and others of you saying, hey, where's the beach? My mind is still there, and I'm with you.
Winter hasn't even started yet.
Right, so not even close.
We still think it's going to be a very busy winter in the snow.
And that's what we were hearing. So a quick recap of that. Your winter weather outlook for this year says a pretty big winter.
Yeah, we think above normal snow. We think we could have a couple bigger storms. It looks a lot like 2009, 2010, which was Snowmageddon here.
Yes.
Maybe not that bad, but it does look like there are a lot of signals that are very similar to that. And latest stuff's coming in that we're watching over there in the weather department is now, so we were going like normal to slightly above normal in December for temperatures. You know, maybe not so cold in December or back and forth cold. Now December is coming in and looking colder and colder, and there's a chance we could do an early December storm. So we're tracking all of that.
As in a larger snowstorm, possibly?
Potentially we could do more snow than I was even expecting during the month of December.
Okay.
And it's all far away and things change. So we'll watch that. But most of our climate signals are suddenly going in the colder, sooner direction. Whereas our winter weather outlook, we were thinking more, January, February, March is kind of the core of winter. Now, we might have to tack on December.
Wow. If it, in fact, gets cold enough that it could do that, is what you're saying?
I dropped my mic.
I know. Look at this. like that on your
Yeah,
tie.
it could get colder sooner, and maybe we could see a little bit more
Right.
snow sooner. But we'll see. I mean, that's far away.
What I've gleaned from this, though, is that tomorrow, whereas it's not going to be as bad snow sleet-wise, it's more traffic, people getting hyped about this, maybe a little bit of nervousness, people on the roads.
And, they should stay up to date. I mean, we're
Yeah.
on tonight, 5 o'clock. Sue and Caitlin will see a whole bunch more models come
Okay.
in. They'll update this snow. You want to go back to the snow graphic?
Yeah, let's do it.
Because, again, the problem is not these numbers. Grassy coating to an inch of sleet on the grass. We all could deal with that. The problem will be the timing. It comes during the morning commute. And the school systems. Everybody always wants to know: is my school going to be out? Is my work going to be out? Best chance is west of I-95 for that. And the reason you would get out is because of the timing. Yes, you could still have sleet falling in Montgomery County and Loudoun County at 10 o'clock in the morning. Do you send the kids to school?
Would it be a delay?
Because your treated roadways will be fine. But your untreated roadways and your sidewalks could get a little slickness to them. So do you send the kids to school in that? Do you not? I think we will get closures out along the I-81 corridor up in the Maryland Panhandle, West Virginia Panhandle. I think there'll be closings out that way.
Yeah.
The closer you get to D.C., the more skeptical I am on it.
Definitely. Well, the timing is interesting, too, because when the snow or sleet, whatever happens in the early morning, when do schools know to make that decision?
Most of them have to make the call by 5, 6 o'clock because that's when the buses start hitting the roads. And by 5, 6 o'clock, it might not be snowing in DC, or it might not be sleeting, or whatever it's going to do. So they're going to rely, and they don't call me, they don't call Sue, they don't call any of us in the weather department. They call the National Weather Service, and they talk to those guys. So it will be heavily dependent on when they make those phone calls to the National Weather Service at 4 o'clock tomorrow morning. And they say, "Hey, what's up? Is this coming across?"
Yeah.
Then they'll make the call based on that. So they will probably make the call based on the forecast. However, any of these totals you see, you get 1 to 3 inches in Front Royal, or you get an inch here in D.C., as soon as we switch to rain, it's going to wash away and it's going to be gone. So this is not it's sticking around kind of deal.
Just a little taste in the morning.
It's a small winter preview. It's just coming at the worst time.
Early morning.
It's early morning with the commute. It will not make the commute tomorrow morning pleasant, and tomorrow afternoon, even though it's rain, it's a cold rain, it's a heavy rain.
Which is the worst weather, isn't it?
It's miserable.
It's the worst miserable, yeah.
Tomorrow's miserable.
Oh, guys, you heard it here. So you can see sort of with the numbers with this map, if some of you are asking about your particular towns and whatnot in Maryland and Virginia, if you can kind of tell from some of Mike's graphics here, you guys will be updating, or they will be updated throughout the day.
Yeah, so
we'll put these out again.
Tucker and I have worked hard all morning.
They have.
And we're ready to go home and go to bed, so we will do that. And we will leave all of these problems to Sue and Caitlin and Gary.
There he is, the hard worker himself.
He is. Fresh face. There he is.
Look at you guys.
Right?
Are you ready? Are you done?
They're doing some
Tuck,
promos.
We got to do a promo here.
Say hey, Tuck.
I don't look a day over 50 with my makeup.
Not a day.
Looks great. So smooth.
All right. I'm sure Mike did a good job explaining what's going to happen.
Yes, he did. Thank you, Mike.
12 inches of snow in D.C.
And let me just say, if we get it wrong, he's fired.
Yeah, right. All right, guys.
All right, that's it.
Tucker and I got to run. We got to do some shoots, but
perfect.
Stu will join.
We'll get some more updates from other meteorologists here, and
the new data continues to come in. There's like 25 more models before anything hits the ground here.
Right.
In DC
Okay.
So we'll track them all. We'll put updates on social media.
Perfect.
They'll join you.
Yep.
5, 6 o'clock tonight. We're on the news.
Then you get some big stuff. Okay. Yeah. Awesome. Thanks for your work today, Mike. We'll talk to you soon.
All right. Sounds good.
Have a good promo.
Yeah, enjoy the taste of winter, everybody.
Yes, enjoy the taste, guys. Yes. Okay. So if you're on YouTube or Facebook, stay with us. Mike's going to go do his stuff.
Bye-bye.
And we'll stay here with some live news. We're going to jump around to some of the live feeds coming in today. But let's continue on with some of those top stories from today on this Wednesday, November 14th. Take a look.
This year alone, an estimated 240,000 toy-related injuries occurred. One child is treated every 3 minutes for a toy-related injury.
The consumer advocacy group World Against Toys Causing Harm, or WATCH, is releasing their annual Worst Toys for the Holiday Season list. Included in the lineup, a Black Panther slash claw.
There's likely one thing a child's going to do with that claw, and you might imagine what that will look like.
A Power Rangers Super Ninja Sword.
Retracts and extends, rigid plastic, sold for 4-year-olds, potential for serious eye injuries, impact injuries.
Along with a Nerf gun, a cutting fruit kit, and not as obvious, a pillow pet. All making the list due to the potential dangers lurking behind playful exteriors. The organization warns anyone buying toys this holiday season not to assume all of them have been properly vetted during pre-market testing. And just because the item comes from a reputable brand or retailer doesn't make it safe. Some toy industry trade members disagree, though, and call the list biased and inaccurate.
Watch is not testing any of the toys that they've included on this list for their safety. And toy manufacturers go to great lengths to ensure that toys are safe and compliant, and they have a lot of testing that they do in order to ensure that.
Hanukkah begins December 2nd, and Christmas is just a couple of weeks after. I'm Garrett Tenney, Fox News.
This is probably one of the most difficult tasks.
Search and rescue teams making more gruesome discoveries while combing the rubble for fire victims in Paradise, California on Tuesday.
Today, an additional 6 human remains were recovered.
The death toll could continue to increase, with an undisclosed number of people still missing. Officials say National Guard troops will soon be joining the search for remains. Nearby, flames are spreading. More than 5,000 firefighters are working tirelessly to stop the growing blaze and strengthen containment lines.
These kind of fires that have this level of devastation don't just wear you out physically, they wear you out mentally and emotionally, just because you're trying to do so much for people in such a compressed amount of time.
Meanwhile, at the other end of the state, crews made some progress on the Woolsey fire. Low humidity gave firefighters an edge while battling the flames from the ground and the air. However, winds also pushed some flames up hillsides.
A lot of the areas where this slop over took place is in very steep and rugged terrain, which causes even more intense fire behavior.
And a new brush fire sparking in San Bernardino County late Tuesday. CAL FIRE officials already dubbing the rapidly spreading blaze the Sierra Fire. 2018 has now officially become the worst fire year in state history, burning more than 1,600,000 acres, and they're still far from being contained. In New York, Jackie Heinrich, Fox News.
The bus ride to Levi's Stadium. It was the first time the Paradise High School football players had seen each other since the fire broke out.
The boys haven't even been together before this event, so they're able to come together, they're able to feel normal, and it's super important to think about something else.
Though the high school still stands, the campfire destroyed their town and burned most of the players' homes.
It's been rough. We lost our house, so we've just been living in a hotel, but getting to see all my friends right now is really good.
It's just hard, you know, losing your house and just having such a great season too, and then just everything coming to an end within a day. It all happened so fast.
The football team had been ranked #1 just a few weeks ago, but the fire forced them to forfeit the rest of their season. That meant no playoffs. So when the 49ers offered them tickets to tonight's game, plus field access, it was a welcome distraction.
It means a lot. It's like just cool experience to be able to come back with all my friends, you know, and just enjoy life and just kind of just take things easy, you know. Just get a break from everything that's going on.
And so today there were hugs and even a few smiles from a team that was just grateful to be together.
Even though our houses are gone and the town's flattened, one of the worst parts is just not having anything to do. No work to go to, no school to go to, no church to go to, no park to go to, no neighborhood to go to, anything. So we can be together and we can be normal. And so kids were joking a little bit after they got into it. It was just really sweet.
Running from a tower of flames, it was a terrifying escape from Paradise.
Family upon family just running down the street, running. Flames on both sides, it was crazy.
Like thousands of others, Amber Patton and her family left everything behind.
Grabbed nothing, the people and the animals if we could, yeah.
And so were you worried about losing everything?
At first, yeah, you know, that part was hard to swallow, but now this stuff doesn't even matter. I mean, the lives lost is unbearable. It's hard to wrap your head around it. You know, I feel really blessed that my family and my friends got out, but a lot of people didn't.
Belongings and a lifetime of memories lose their value, knowing dozens lost their lives.
Things can be replaced and, we're together and that's all that matters.
But there was one thing that could not be replaced at Patton's mother's house a few miles away.
She almost fell to the floor when she realized that she forgot her mom.
Patton's home burned, so did her mother's. She assumed her grandmother's ashes would be gone. She was wrong.
It's a miracle. I can't even believe that she made it.
When her brother went back to check, he took these photos. The only thing standing at the home is the brick fireplace, and right there on the mantle, the urn, intact.
It's a sign that, it's going to be okay.
In this deadly and destructive wildfire, with so much lost, this family has found something to be grateful for.
There's always good things to look at, and we need to remember that.
Dozens of people were inside the Tree of Life synagogue for Shabbat services this morning, including some that were there for a baby naming ceremony. But around 9:55, a gunman walked in with an assault rifle and 3 handguns and yelled, "All Jews must die," before he started shooting those who were there to worship. Over the course of several minutes, he killed 11 people and injured 2 others. When police arrived, the gunman was on his way out and shot an officer who was just getting on the scene. And then he went back inside and held up as the SWAT team started to move in. He shot 2 more officers before eventually surrendering himself after he received several gun wounds. Officials described the scene as one of the most horrific they have ever seen. And the state's governor said words cannot describe the way his state feels tonight.
My heart breaks for the members of the Jewish community. Today, all of Pennsylvania mourns with you. Anti-Semitism has absolutely no place in our Commonwealth. Any attack on one community of faith in Pennsylvania is an attack against every community of faith in Pennsylvania.
The suspect they have in custody is 46-year-old Robert Bowers from the Pittsburgh area. Police believe he acted alone, but investigators have already begun to look at every aspect of his life, including his social media history, where we have already found several accounts with the same name that have been taken down, where anti-Semitic posts have been made as recently as an hour before this morning's attack. And that post ended with, quote, "I'm going in." Attorney General Jeff Sessions has said that they will be filing federal hate crime charges in this case. And of course, that brings up the possibility of the death penalty. In Pittsburgh, I'm Garrett Tenney, Fox News.
They're all saying what a great relationship we have, and they're actually correct.
Like so many breakups in life, theirs also appears to have been because of money.
We want to help Europe, but it has to be fair. Right now, the burden sharing has been largely on the United States.
But France's unwillingness to fund NATO at the suggested 2% level of GDP before 2024 isn't the only factor driving a wedge between Presidents Trump and Macron, men who at one point appeared as close as any of the world's leaders.
Nationalism is a betrayal of patriotism.
Macron's public criticism of Mr. Trump's idea of nationalism and the suggestion that Europe needs to build an army to protect itself from, among others, the U.S., well, that was simply one punch too many. Today, the American president came out swinging, noting on Twitter that it wasn't the U.S., China, or Russia that attacked France. It was Germany in World Wars I and II. How did that work out for France? They were starting to learn German in Paris before the U.S. came along. A for NATO or not. Later, tweets about unfair trade and Macron's low approval ratings set up the president's ultimate right hook: make France great again. Whether the tweets hit below the belt depends on your perspective, but from any angle, the president's relationship with some of Europe's most prominent leaders has become increasingly threadbare. German Chancellor Angela Merkel, a frequent target of Mr. Trump's criticism for lack of NATO funding, agreed with Macron's suggestion that now may be the time for a well-funded European army. Ironic, considering that's what NATO is supposed to be, an alliance which hasn't seen Germany or France live up to their respective financial obligations for years. NATO officials believe that by the end of the year, 8 member nations, including the U.S., will meet that 2% target. And while it may not sound like much, 8 out of 29 NATO countries, keep this in mind, only 3 met the 2% target back in 2014. At the White House, I'm Kevin Cork, Fox News. Next, Fox 7 Austin.
Reverend Al, thank you very much. And let me thank the Reverend and all of you for what you are doing every day with the National Action Network. It seems that whenever there is a crisis, when there is a police shooting or an act of brutality or an act of voter suppression, Al Sharpton and many of you are there. And in this unprecedented and dangerous moment in American history, Al, thank you and everyone here for what you're doing. Like Sherrod and many of my colleagues, before the election, I was off running around this country, doing everything that I could to make sure that we had the kind of representation here in Washington that we desperately need. And as I went around the country, I talked to workers who are making $8 an hour. And you know what? You can't live on $8 an hour, which is why we're going to raise the minimum wage to a living wage, $15 an hour. And I talked to people who had no health insurance, or maybe they had health insurance, but the deductible and the copayment was so high, they couldn't afford to go to the doctor. And what people around the country and in Vermont are telling me is that the time is long overdue for this great country to do what every other major country on earth does and guarantee health care to all as a right, not a privilege. We have a good program now, public health program for seniors. It's called Medicare. It works well. We need to expand it to cover dental care and eyeglasses and hearing aids. But it is a good program, and there is no reason why we should not expand Medicare for all, single-payer program. But it's not just economic issues that I have been hearing about. There is a fear in this country that we have a president today who is operating in a way that no president in our lifetime has ever operated. And I say this, it does not give me any joy to say this. And I've never said this about any president, no matter what his views may have been. But we must be honest and straightforward and say that we have a president who is a racist, a president who is a sexist, a president who is a homophobe, a president who is a xenophobe, and a president who is a religious bigot. And it gives me no joy to tell you that. But that is the simple truth, and we've got to confront that truth. I don't have to tell anybody in this room, least of all in this room, the history of discrimination that this country has experienced going way, way back, before slavery, when the settlers came and did terrible things to the Native Americans. And the discrimination against women. 100 years ago, women did not have the right to vote. And the religious bigotry we were seeing against the Irish, the Catholics, the Italians, the Jews, you name it. That's part of our history. And we are saying to Donald Trump today, loudly and clearly, that we have suffered too much pain, too much discrimination. Mr. Trump, we are not going backward, we are going forward. And I think Sherrod Brown made this point, and let me reiterate it, and others have made this point. I have run for office many times in the state of Vermont. Sometimes I've lost. Fortunately, more often I have won. But the God's truth is that it has never, ever occurred to me to sit around with coworkers and say, hey, that part of the state, pretty conservative, they don't vote for me. How can we make it more difficult for people to participate because they might vote against me? I've never done that, and the vast majority of people have never done that. So it really galls me that we have candidates out there Republican governors and secretaries of state and attorneys general who are so afraid that people reject their ideology that the only way they think they can win elections is making it harder for people of color, young people, old people to vote. What a disgrace that is. And let me say to anybody who runs for office, if you don't have the guts to defend your ideas, if you can't win an election in a free and fair way, get the hell out of politics and get another job. So we have a lot of work to do in the economy, creating an economy that works for all, not just the 1%. We have a lot of work to do to revitalize American democracy, to end voter suppression, to end gerrymandering, and to bring back the tenet of one person, one vote, not a radical idea. What we have also got to do, in my view, is something pretty simple. In one way or another, we need automatic voter registration applicable to 50 states in this country. And that says that if you are 18 years of age and a citizen of the United States of America, you have the right to vote. End of discussion. Brothers and sisters, we are at a very dangerous moment in American history. And we've got a president who is not only a bigot, we have a president who, in my view, really does not believe in democracy. The outrageous things that he is saying about the elections in Georgia and in Florida and Arizona, he wants to decide who's going to win before the votes are counted. That's not the way it's done, Mr. Trump. You know, we have a radical idea that maybe in Florida, maybe in Georgia, maybe in other states, we actually count the votes. How radical can you get? So let me conclude by saying this. Sherrod made this point as well. When you have a White House that gives huge tax breaks for billionaires, and a White House that brings forward a budget that makes $1 trillion cut to Medicaid, $500 billion to Medicare, $72 billion to the Social Security Trust Fund. When you have a White House that does not even believe in the reality of climate change, ignoring what's going on in California and many other parts of this country, they got nothing to say to win votes. And the only way they win votes is getting one group of people to hate another group of people. And our job now more than ever is to come together as one people, whether we are black or white or Latino or Asian American, Native American, whether we're straight or we're gay, whether we're male or we're female. For the sake of our children, for the future of democracy in America, literally for the future of this planet, we have got to come together as one people and demand an agenda which is based on justice, and demand a government that works for all of us and not just wealthy campaign contributors. Thank you all very much. Yes, absolutely.
Senator Bernie Sanders. Senator Bernie Sanders, y'all. As stated by Congresswoman Pelosi, 50 years ago this year, the first African-American woman went to Congress, and she came out of Brooklyn. 72, when I was going to be 18 years old, I was youth director of a campaign for president, Shirley Chisholm. And when I see fighters, I was telling Karen Maloney, like her, that it reminds me of Mrs. Chisholm. The one that sits in that seat and that has that same kind of incarnation, who's been bathed in activism. Mrs. Chisholm was a teacher and an activist. Very few people know she beat the head of CORE, James Farmer, who was a Republican that moved to Bed-Stuy to defeat her, sent by Richard Nixon. And Mrs. Chisholm was an assemblywoman and beat him. We used to go out on the corners. I was a youngster, and she had me and Ada Smith and Victor Robles, and we would all be ducking on who was going to hold her pocketbook while she spoke. So I learned politics, Yvette, holding Shirley Chisholm's pocketbook, because Victor and Ada always tricked me. Well, I've come to watch Yvette and I grow in the movement together, but she's never made me hold her pocketbook. But she has held our community, and she has been an example of a fighter. She has served on energy and as well as small business, and she has never lost her fervor as an activist, and we're proud she's our congresswoman from where I come from, and that is in Flatbush and Crown Heights. Brooklyn in the house. Congresswoman Yvette Clarke.
Thank you very much, Reverend Sharpton. To Reverend Sharpton, to the NAN leadership, membership, and activists, to the Reverend Clerk.
And that there are much better and more urgent uses for our resources. Just a few blocks away, there is a high school, a public high school, that is owed nearly $2 million by the state of New York. There are schools all over the state that are owed in total billions of dollars in foundation aid. What this move, without transparency, without going through the ULURP process, what this move really tells us is what our priorities are in New York State. And if we don't move to stop this, if we don't do everything we can to push for accountability, to stop this, to make sure that when a company is coming into our communities, that it is actually benefiting the communities, when we don't do anything to stop it, it indicates that we're valuing private interests over public education, over fixing our transit system, and we're not going to tolerate it. I and my colleagues around me, we are determined to continue to fight this, and I'm so grateful to be in this movement with all of you, fighting against this and fighting for our communities. Thank you.
Thank you, Julia. So Amazon says that they're going to be creating jobs and they're going to be doing some training for our folks in our communities, that they are the future. Well, here we have Enrique Peña, who is actually the future, who's going to be speaking about why he is against Amazon and what this will mean for him as a student in CUNY.
Bueno. Buenas tardes a todos. My name is Enrique Peña. I'm a student at Queens College. I'm from Peru, but I've lived in Queens for 3 years, and I consider it my home already, my community. Queens is New York, because this borough embraces an enormous community of hardworking people, no matter where they come from, and gives them an opportunity to succeed. That's the spirit of New York. That's the spirit of Queens, and that's what we should focus on. When I first heard that Amazon headquarters 2 was coming to Queens, I was speechless, because I knew that the promise of those new jobs and development will not be for people like me and my community. I'm in college, studying political science, but you don't have to do that to know that the gap between rich and poor in New York City is increasing, because it is there. You see it every day. You hear it on the news. Every day it is harder for people like me and my family and others in my community to pay our rents, to provide for our own, and let alone being able to afford a college tuition. I am a CUNY student, and I'm proud to say it because CUNY represents the American dream I pursued when I came to this country. It is the biggest tool for upward mobility in the country, but now, like many of my classmates, we are being let down by a promise of jobs that will ignore us in favor of wealthy white graduates. At Queens College and across CUNY, campuses are crumbling, staff is being underpaid, and support for students is constantly disappearing. And still, our tuitions are increasing. CUNY is, or should be, the pride of New York City, but we are pushed aside as if education wasn't a priority for our leader. Constantly, we are told that there is no more money for public education for CUNY, but it is likely that Amazon will get nearly $3 billion of tax giveaways of New York taxpayers. This is insulting, considering that the governor has refused to sign that MOA bill multiple times, a bill that will give us a fair funding. We demand that New York State and New York City invest in student success for working class and disadvantaged students. We are denied funding for education for hardworking New Yorkers. Why should we give a huge tax break for the wealthiest man on earth? Do you want to help our economy? Do you really want to help New York? Invest in CUNY. Invest in student success through programs like ASAP. Invest in our future. Thank you.
Assemblymember Michael Blake is here. Everyone please welcome Michael Blake.
Good morning.
Morning.
Good morning.
Good morning.
The people united will never be defeated. 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 My name is Michael Blake. I'm an assembly member from the South Bronx. We stand with you, sisters and brothers. We come to you right now to say this is ridiculous. It is wrong. It is unacceptable. I come to you as someone where our assembly district is owed more money when it comes to the campaign for fiscal equity than any assembly district in New York City. I come to you as someone where we're dealing with lead right now in the Melrose houses. We come to you right now where we are sick and tired of the trains being delayed and late and buses having problems and the injustices that are happening. We should be investing in housing and hot water, not in helicopters. We should be investing in academics, not Amazon. So we stand here with our sisters and brothers of labor. God bless you. To all those that are here, RWDSU and CWN, everyone that's here, God bless you. To NYCC and all you've been doing for community change and Make the Road and all our different groups, we come here today to say enough is enough. This is in the words of Dr. King. In the end, we will not remember the words of our enemies, but the silence of our friends. Well, what happens in the silence and the darkness of night when the decision's made by the governor and the mayor to decide that it is more important to put money into Amazon than the people? This is about the people. The people has said enough is enough. In the same way we stood up when they tried to take health care, we said no. In the same way they tried to deny us, we say no. And today when it comes to Amazon, we say no. Invest when it comes to our small businesses. Invest when it comes to our residents. And fight for the people. God bless you, everybody.
Thank you. Estamos en la lucha. Amazon escucha. Estamos en la lucha. Amazon escucha. Estamos en la lucha. All right, I want to tell you a quick story. There's a building down the road a little bit called City Lights. They were among the first people to come to this part of Long Island City and plant their flag in terms of the Hunters Point section. Their taxes are going up 84%. People who have helped make this community what it is are about to get kicked out of their homes because they can't afford it. We have begged the city and the state to help these people, and we've gotten very little attention. Amazon wants to come here, and they roll out the welcome mat to the tune of $3 billion. They could find $3 billion like that for Amazon, but they can't help the people who are already living here, who are about to get knocked right out of this neighborhood. These are the kinds of problems we're facing. These are the misplaced priorities of our state and city governments right now. I want to next introduce a great assemblywoman from Brooklyn, Latrice Walker.
Good afternoon, everyone. Good morning. I don't know where we are. We hit 12 o'clock yet. I know where I am geographically. But one thing I can say about geography is that Brooklyn taught me a lot about what happens when these big box stores try to come in and infiltrate our communities. take away the lifeblood from our communities. Those are the small businesses. Walmart tried this a few years back, and we sent them on their merry way. With the same group of coalitions of elected officials, RWDSU, NYCC, Make the Road, CWA, and all unions across our city. One of the things that I know representing a community that has an unemployment rate is through the roof. We have poverty rates that are unbelievable. So we're not saying that we are not accepting of good jobs, but we want jobs that are going to give our people dignity. We want jobs that people are going to have some level of reliability, that they won't be laid off before it's time for them to get the benefits that they deserve. We want jobs that are going to pull people out of this poverty. We want jobs that are going to be reliable labor force jobs to really help us deal with many of the situations of our community. We've heard time and time again that there's a recurrent theme here, and that theme is that our schools are owed so much money. Our children deserve so much more. So in the spirit of everything it is that I heard, I have a little chant that I feel myself. And that's, we need money for education, not for banks and corporations. We need money for education, not for banks and corporations. We need money for education, not for banks and corporations. So I stand in solidarity with each and every one of you here today. And in the words of Shirley Chisholm, we know that 3 men sitting in a room came up with this deal. She teaches each and every one of us that when we don't have a seat at the table, that we bring our folding chair. So today, we are all standing with our folding chairs, saying, let's revisit this deal, let's sit down, redline it, mark it up, and make it be responsible to the community and responsible to the needs of the residents of the city of New York. Thank you so much, and thank you for having me.
Thank you very much, Assemblywoman. Please welcome the former Speaker of the New York City Council, Melissa Mark Viverito.
Buenas tardes a todos. Aquí nos encontramos en el mismo papelón, donde tenemos a un gobierno con el gobernador y el alcalde diciendo que necesitan, utilizando nuestro dinero, sobornar a una compañía multibillonaria y que si no lo hacemos vamos a perder una gran oportunidad. Nosotros sabemos que eso es un chantaje y nosotros sabemos que lo que necesitamos es invertir en nuestra transportación, en nuestras escuelas públicas, en nuestra vivienda pública, donde nuestros niños no tengan que vivir con plomo. Así que vamos a negar y vamos a rechazar lo que se está proponiendo y luchar y unir nuestros esfuerzos con esta comunidad. So I want to thank the leadership of this community, Councilmember Jimmy Van Bramer, Janaris, all of the community residents that are here, and saying resoundingly that we reject this deal. Yeah. That there is an attempt to make us believe that our taxpayer dollars must be utilized to bribe a multi-billion-dollar corporation. And that if we reject this deal, we're rejecting a good opportunity. Well, we all know that this deal is a no-go. And that is why we're here united to say we say no, that we need investment in our public housing so that our children do not live with lead, so that we invest in our public schools to provide a quality education, and that we do support our local small businesses. So I join in these efforts and definitely reject this deal. Say Amazon no. And thank you again to the leadership that is here today. Let's stand together and push this out of the ballpark.
So we have 3 council members. Want to do Antonio Reynoso? Which one do you do? Oh, Jim. You do.
Okay, so by the way, the former speaker made a great point. We keep getting told how much money this is going to generate, but let me put the lie to that as well. When they say they're going to make $9 for every dollar, they're comparing that to nothing happening on this property. We know that if Amazon leaves, something else is going to be here because something else was going to be here. And Amazon displaced the development that was coming to do this. So don't be fooled by the magic numbers that they're throwing around, the magic jelly beans, as Costa called them. This is a bunch of bull. And by the way, And by the way, Amazon was coming here without all this money anyway, so let's be serious about it. We have a great grassroots activist, someone who has been at the forefront of so many great fights. I want to ask her to say a few words. Nomiki Kanst.
Thank you, Senator Janaris. Excuse me, because I'm losing my voice. So what we're seeing here is a pattern. This is not anything that's new to New York. It's not anything that's new to the country. It's not anything that's new worldwide. What Amazon has done here is what they did before they took a physical location in New York. First, they went after small businesses online. How many small businesses in New York have had to shut down, affecting our communities? That's money for our communities. Those are immigrant owners. Those are our small businesses in New York that have had to shut down. That's what they first did. Then they take us on the land. So first they come after us digitally, then they come after us here in Queens, and it's going to affect every single community in Queens. I live in Astoria, you live in Astoria, our assemblywoman and councilman from Astoria know that what happens here in Long Island City happens to the houses around Long Island City that are not being funded already. Those taxes should be going to NYCHA. They should be going to education. They should be going to the state to fund the MTA. I am sick and tired of hearing these excuses from the state that they don't have money. We have money to pay for Jeff Bezos, the world's richest man, his helicopter pad, because he can't take the subway that we all have to deal with. Amazon should not be here, and we should call for an immediate investigation. We should call for an immediate investigation of what happened, how it happened, call on Mayor de Blasio and Governor Cuomo to show up. This is unacceptable. Amazon already proved that they don't pay living wages and they don't give benefits. We should be demanding double their minimum wage of $15 an hour as just passed and make it 30 plus benefits. That's a start. We need an immediate investigation. This is unacceptable. The community was not involved. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I just want to remind everyone again that just this morning, several residents of the Queensbridge houses called my office to say that they do not have heat. Remember that. Remember that all day long when the governor and the mayor tell you they had to give $3 billion to the richest man in the world. They did not. First of all, let me thank also so many council members who are here. The next one, Councilmember Antonio Reynoso.
I want to thank Janaris and Van Bramer for having this rally on this important topic. What we ended up seeing is that the mayor and the governor believe New York is a pair of threes, when it's obvious that we're a royal flush. Yeah. They underplayed their hand, and underplaying it made it so that they've undervalued New York City. New York City is where everyone wants to be, including Amazon. There's no need to shower them with money to make that happen, paying 2 times as much as Virginia. It just makes no sense how we have the governor and the mayor making this deal and completely devaluing the people and the systems of New York that make it such a valuable place to be in. It's very frustrating to see that we've also been undercut by losing the ULURP process in the city council that would have allowed us to get money for trains and for the subway, to get money for schools, to talk about green space, to fight for prevailing wage. These are all things that we could have done. We have protections for this. And it was undercut from us by the state government. And don't forget, there's more happening here. Because on top of just Amazon, there's 2 developments that are going to go under the state purview of ULURP, or their ULURP process, that's going to make it so Jimmy can't fight for those 2 housing developments that are going to happen there as well. There's so much wrong with this plan. There's so much dishonesty. And it comes from the mayor and from this governor. They messed up. Amazon has to go. We're smarter than this. We're better than this. And I'm going to stick with our elected officials to make sure that that's a clear message. And just in Spanish, very quickly, Amazon está aquí. Nosotros hemos vendido a Nueva York. Nosotros vendimos al valor de Nueva York. Porque ellos querían estar aquí, no necesitaban el dinero. Y fuimos nosotros, de mal negociadores, que le dimos todo ese dinero a Amazon. Y nosotros tenemos que cambiar eso y vamos a estar aquí en esta lucha siempre juntos. Thank you.
Thank you. And Kalos?
Next, we have a friend and ally from the other side of the East River, from Manhattan, Councilman Ben Kallos.
Thank you. Councilmember Ben Kallos, I represent the Upper East Side, just across the river. I also have the privilege of representing Roosevelt Island. You can actually see it from here. You actually, to get to Roosevelt Island, you come through this neighborhood in Queens. I know we're joined by media from Roosevelt Island, and I can tell you that residents on Roosevelt Island are scared to death of being displaced by what Amazon will bring. And I join Councilmember Van Bramer, Costa Constantinides, Steve Levin, and Antonio Reynoso being concerned about what's going to happen in this whole community. I want to thank Senator Gianaris and Jimmy Van Bramer for leading the city in this fight. This is not any small undertaking, taking on two of the most powerful people in the city of New York and the most powerful, richest. He's going to have a helicopter pad. It's like a Bond villain. I don't know what to say, but it's just, and I'll be honest, a bunch of us did sign a letter saying we wanted to have a conversation with Amazon. And I'll be the first to say that, like, talking to tech companies is a good thing. I'm a tech person. But we didn't sign on the dotted line that we're signing on away our right to negotiate our tax dollars. We didn't say that everyone standing here, including folks operating the cameras, everyone standing here, they're taking $3 billion out of your pockets and handing it to Amazon, and none of us get a say in that, and that ain't right. We have a community planning process so that folks around here get a say in what happens, but they've decided to cut the city out of the process, and that isn't right. And last but not least, New York City is a union town. We believe that people are entitled to protections, to having job standards, and we have no guarantees for any of this, especially when this particular tech company has a horrible reputation when it comes to the people working in their warehouses. And so it's great that they're going to pay folks an average wage of $150,000, which might just be that if Jeff Bezos makes however many million or billion dollars a year and everyone else makes minimum wage, it averages out to $150,000 a year. This is about making sure that everyone can actually afford to live here. And I think the other key piece is just when you look at the census tract and people earning $48,000 a year, and now you're going to throw a bunch of people making $150,000 perhaps, that's going to have what is called a gentrifying effect. And without a planning process, we're in a lot of trouble. So I really thank everyone here. We have to keep fighting. We have to fight for our neighborhoods, because if we don't fight, no one else will. Thank you.
All right, our final speaker before we do a round of thank yous and then questions from the media. Thrilled to be joined by my colleague, also from Brooklyn, Councilmember Brad Lander.
Thank you, Jimmy and Mike, for bringing us together. Look, let's be clear. This is not only an assault on Long Island City. It's not only an assault on housing affordability. It's not only an assault on transit capacity. This is an assault on our democracy. Amazon has shown their contempt for democracy from the very beginning of this process, organizing the bidding process as a war of all against all, forcing cities to bid down their tax base to beg for their corporate beneficence. The final round of 20, they required all those cities, if they wanted to bid, to sign a non-disclosure agreement, hiding the public bids from the public. I will be introducing legislation to make sure that New York City never again participates in a bidding process where a non-disclosure agreement would be required. We should not have participated in this one. If they want to come with a bid that's public and transparent and open on the table, that would be fine. This process eroded our democracy. Amazon showed their contempt for democracy in the way that they dealt with our city council colleagues in Seattle when they passed a bill to say we need to provide more affordable housing and address the challenges of homelessness created by this growth through raising our tax base. Amazon went on a capital strike, threatened to leave a second building unfinished, and spent millions of dollars against the people of Seattle working together to invest in the infrastructure necessary to meet the needs of growth. And boy, this process has shown its contempt for democracy in the governor, the mayor, and Amazon together designing a boutique process for public subsidy, a boutique process for land use and a boutique process for helicopter pad construction. I'll just say this. The mayor may be willing to give away our land use process, our democratic land use process. The governor may be willing to sell his naming rights, but we are not willing to sell out our democracy. Thank you.
That's right, Brad. Thank you so much, Council Member. I'm glad I'm represented by you. Thank you for that. That is right. We're not going to let our democracy go away. We're not going to let Amazon get away with this. And I like to just ensure again that this fight is not a fight of one group or two groups. There are a series of organizations that are here today, and I want to thank everybody who is here, from Workers United, Empower, CAF, Pratt Center, New Economy Project, Churches United for Fair Housing, New York City Employment Coalition. Everybody who is here and folks who were not able to be here today are going to be looking very closely as to what Amazon is going to try to do in our city. Gentrification of jobs and gentrification of our communities is not acceptable, not with our money. Thank you everybody for being here, and if there is any questions from the press.
So on topic only, 5 questions.
Is this rally more about the process of how Amazon got here, or is it about opposing Amazon coming here at all?
It's not only about the process, and it's not only about opposing them at all. It's about a lot of things. It's about $3 billion in taxpayer money secretly given to the richest corporation in the country without process, without us knowing what was going on. It's about coming to Long Island City without talking to this community, which is one that is already stressed to the seams and is bursting at the seams. And it is about making sure that Amazon's a responsible corporate citizen. We should be talking about corporate responsibility, not corporate welfare. If Amazon wants to come here, they should be talking about subsidizing Long Island City, not squeezing subsidies out of New York State and New York City.
The state and the city say for every $1 they're giving Bezos in incentives, we get 9 back. How do you answer? They say it's good for business.
I talked about that earlier. That's a bunch of malarkey, okay? That is completely untrue. They are comparing an empty plot of land versus what Amazon might bring. This land is not going to sit empty if Amazon goes away. I promise you that. There was already a development that was planned here that has now been supplanted by this plan. That first plan was going through the Euler process, so the city council and the community would have something to say about it. This one does not. And never mind the fact that many of us believe Amazon was coming here whether they got that money or they didn't, which means that money is lost and that economic benefit would come regardless.
Let me also just say, all of the information that you're getting is coming from the administration, the governor and the mayor who cooked up this crooked deal to begin with. So we have to see where they're coming up with the numbers that they're developing and actually have an opportunity for the press, the media, and all of us to actually delve into it. Why would we believe anything that they have to say when they hid everything from us and still are hiding everything from us about this deal? They are not transparent, they are not being honest, and they know that they proclaim to be progressive Democrats, but they've sold us out, and now they are attempting to hide everything from us to make it happen.
New York 1.
Say it again, Chen.
Back to the drawing board to talk to you guys and work out something new. Would you be open to it?
No.
They would have to do, first of all, what they would have to do is take the $3 billion off the table and then talk about what Amazon is prepared to do to make sure this community is made right.
Every elected official here signed a letter last year urging Amazon to set up in New York City, expressing the belief that, quote, Amazon will be a strong contributor to our civic and commercial life. The concerns about Amazon union busting were not new at that time. The concerns about its impact on housing prices in Seattle were not new at that time. Why did you all sign on to that letter if you're now saying you believe that Amazon will not be a responsible corporate citizen?
The real problem with what was going on is the fact that there's $3 billion of public subsidy going to Amazon. When that letter was signed, many of us thought jobs would be good. We never contemplated that public dollars would be secretly given to Amazon to get them here.
So would you support Amazon coming with the exact same project with no tax?
As I just said, and I believe the letter had language to this effect, if it means an increase in services for the community that they want to join to make sure we can handle them coming here, and there's no public subsidy involved, then that's the conversation we should start having.
Last question.
Did the mayor or governor ever say anything about the ULA process beforehand?
No. In the absence of a vote, is there anything you guys can actually do to stop this?
Well, we're meeting as a council, the speaker, looking at everything with our land use division about what can be done. Obviously, some legislative efforts underway as well. We're going to do everything and anything we can to put the brakes on this really bad deal for New York.
Thank you, everybody. Any other questions? You can approach elected comms people individually or myself, okay?
Have you talked to the mayor or governor on the phone since this happened?
I spoke to the mayor.
What was the conversation like? You spoke to the mayor?
Well, I'll talk to you, right, yeah.
It's better that way.
Yeah.
Rob's around here, too.
Rob who? My guy? Or
Your guy.
Thank you.
You can help you.
Oh my goodness, yes, wow.
Watch the frenzy. Thank you for keeping it short.
That's intense.
I got you guys. A lot of things.
Wow.
Nobody's going to win.
I gotta go file.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Mike.
Hey, what's up? Well, thank you so much for being here.
My pleasure.
If we haven't gotten our letter out,
Thank you for that. No problem.
Let's make sure we get it out whenever you want it.
Local always gets first dibs.
I know. It may be a day 2 story. Or day 5, whatever you want.
All right, there you guys have it. Obviously, some unhappy campers when it comes to Amazon's move to Queens and to Arlington, Virginia. That was in New York City organizers getting together to talk about Amazon moving in there, and you have to wonder how many people are on the side of this happening and how many people aren't. And there's quite a bit of a showing there for these protests. So we're going to continue to follow that as it's. Let me grab my mic here. As it does unfold over these next couple of weeks, and as we head into the Christmas season as well, it will become increasingly important because people are using Amazon for the holidays also. All right, back over to DC. We're here to watch the National Action Network Conference. This is the 2018 conference, and Al Sharpton is, of course, leading this. Many notable Democratic leaders speaking about civil rights and sort of this movement that we're ushering into this year. Take a listen.
2018, where we have votes being purged in Georgia and where we have people being overlooked all over this country. I'm concerned when you have a president that will stand up and in no uncertain terms insult 3 black women reporters and act like we don't understand what his disposition is. And that is our concern. We get to 20 when we get to 20. But where I went to public schools in Brooklyn, but 18 came before 20. And that is why we are in Washington to deal with, we won the House, we've got influence in the Senate. Now, what is it that we are going to get done? And I think that when you look at this brother, in fact, one of the women I'm talking about just walked in, Yamiche Alcindor, one of the victims of Trumpism. She's from NPR. She's going to really talk about me bad for embarrassing her by introducing her. But whether you talk about what he did as a student organizer, as a city councilman, as the mayor of Newark, and now as a U.S. Senator, he has been on the front line. He's been productive. And when the president tweeted, you could always tell. My mother told me when I was a kid that she was from Alabama, I was from Brooklyn. She said, you don't know anything about a farm. She said, but always remember that if you throw a brick in a pile of hogs, the one that hollers is the one you hit. When you hear somebody hollering, it's because they've been hit. So when I saw the president tweeting that old Newark was a failure under Cory Booker, I said, oh, Cory must have hit him now. because he's up tweeting and hollering. Let me give you the man that made the president squirm during Kavanaugh, Senator Cory Booker.
Does this mic work? Can I use it? I hate to be sitting behind a podium without, but I just want to come out here and just
That might work.
I live in the second ward of New Jersey. I live in a community that is struggling, not just because of who's president today. It is struggling because of decades and decades of policy that came from Washington, D.C. that redlined our community, disinvested in our community, put forth overtly bigoted laws that ground down communities like ours to the detriment not just of those communities, but the ideas of our country. I get worried when we take a moment like this and make it all about who's president. This is more than who's president. In fact, this is a president who wants us to make it all about him. Right. Because when he is leading the news, when he is leading the headlines, when everybody's talking about him, he's sucking all the oxygen there and distracting it from the issues that not just affect communities of color, but affect all communities in our country. This is not about him. It is about us, the United States of America, built one nation under God. And we're not going to let people slice and divide us against each other. We need to talk about the issue. Now, I love the National Action Network because it didn't start as a response to Trump. It started as a response to injustice. And it has been at this for many years because everybody in this room loves this country. And I believe this, if this country hasn't broken your heart, you don't love her enough. You don't love her enough. Because there is injustice in our nation. And this is an organization that formed not because everything's going right, but because there is injustice in our midst. This is a group of folks, like Americans I've met all over this country, who are dissatisfied. We are dissatisfied because we live in a country right now where in many communities, kids can find unleaded gasoline easier than unleaded water. We are dissatisfied because we live in a nation that has a criminal justice system that treats you better if you're rich and guilty than poor and innocent. We are dissatisfied because we live in a nation right now that pays teachers so little that they have to get extra jobs just to make ends meet. We are dissatisfied in this country because on blocks like mine, where a young man was murdered with an assault weapon, we are dissatisfied because we're not even doing the common sense things to make our communities safer that 90% of Americans agree we should do. We're dissatisfied because we have a nation right now where young brothers like Jamil Roberson, a security officer who subdued an assailant, shot and killed, like how many other of our young men and women. We're dissatisfied because there are millions of Americans, black and white and Latino, from all backgrounds, who work full-time jobs every single day, but still are below the poverty line. We're dissatisfied in a nation that professes to favor freedom, but 1 out of every 3 incarcerated women on the planet Earth is right here in the United States of America. And over 80% of those women are survivors of sexual assault. Talk about the school-to-prison pipeline, which is real, but the sexual assault to prison pipeline is also real. Everything I just mentioned, and haven't even mentioned like massive voter suppression like we're seeing in the state of Georgia. Everything I mentioned was going on before this president was elected. And so what do we stand for? Why are we here? Not to talk about who we're against, but what we're for. This is a country that is not perfect, our very founding, these incredible principles and ideals, those documents that elevated the greatest of American values, were also saturated with residues of bigotry and hate. Native Americans in our Declaration of Independence are referred to as savages. Blacks are fractions of human beings, women not mentioned at all. And so the great history of America isn't the absence of hate, isn't the absence of bigotry, isn't the absence of oppression. Those have been with us from the start. The great history of America is not folk here in Washington, but ordinary Americans making an extraordinary commitment to the cause of our country, fighting against those ills and fighting against those evils to make real on the promise of the country for more and more people. That's the story of America. And it didn't come from Washington. It came from organizers like you who came to Washington. It wasn't Strom Thurmond that woke up one day and said, you know what? It's about time those Negro people have some civil rights. No, it was black and brown folks, straight and gay folk, Catholic and Jewish folk, all kind of folks who made a coalition of urgency, who fought for the justice that we enjoy. And the problem right now, I'm sorry, as much as we want to make it about one individual in the White House, King said it more eloquently. What we have to repent for in this day and age is not just the vitriolic words and violent actions of the bad people, but the appalling silence and inaction of the good people. We have the people in this country we need to drive the changes that we have to demand. The question is, too many people are sitting on the sidelines. Too many people think democracy is a spectator sport. All the great changes of our history, from the suffrage movement to the labor movement, all the great changes have been made because the consciousness of our country has awoken and claimed the rightful ideals that we profess when we pledge allegiance to that flag and say that we're going to be a nation of liberty and justice, not for some, for all. And that's where we are right now in America. The very American dream hangs in the balance yet again. This is a moral moment in our country. And everybody here has to make the decision. Will we begin to dilute our ideals as a nation as powerful interests get more and more powerful, and struggling Americans, working Americans, lose their opportunities, that the foundation of this country becomes quicksand, pulling people down into poverty, into hopelessness, into despair, as rates of opioid addiction go up, rates of suicide go up from farmers to people in communities. We are seeing signs that we are losing the very idea of the American dream. Well, I believe in the American dream, and I believe it's worth fighting for. And so I'm going to end with what you all already do. With what you all already do. With what Reverend Al lives every day. Some folk get it twisted. They forget the lessons, Reverend, from church. We all love our country. Don't let anybody use patriotism as a weapon against another American. We all love our country. But the question is, as they say in church, faith without works is dead. You know what I'm talking about. Well, the civic faith that we have, and the ideals we swear oath to, those are being tested right now. It's not enough to say, to put your hand over your heart and say, I pledge allegiance to the ideals of this country. You gotta not just put your hand over your heart, but you gotta extend your hand in service, reaching out to your fellow American, even if they disagree with you politically, even if they disagree with you the way you pray, even if they disagree with your ideas. We're all one nation with one destiny. We need each other. And so I just end with a poem, because sometimes you gotta go back to art. We know this from the movement, the songs and the poetry. Sustained us, awoken the moral imagination of a country to what's possible. I still believe that we are a nation headed to the promised land. I still believe that we are a nation that can be a light unto other nations again. I still believe that there's nothing that's wrong with America that can't be solved by what's right with America. And so I call on the words of Langston Hughes, who basically said, swear the oath, not with your words, but with your deeds. He said, oh, let America be America again, the land that never has been yet, but yet must be the land where everyone is free. The poor man, the Indian, the Negro, me. And who made America? Whose sweat and blood, whose faith and pain, whose hand at the boundary, whose plow in the rain, must make our mighty dream live again. Oh yes, I say it plain, America never was America to me. And yet I swear this oath, America will be. Right now, this nation needs every single one of us. This nation needs that. This nation needs people who swear that oath, not with their lips, not with their words, but with their commitment to country, because there are too many things going wrong, and don't try to make them about one individual. We've got to make them about the cause of our country, where all of us united in struggle can make real on the words of our ancestors. And this can be a nation, one under God, where everyone has abundant pathways to life, liberty, and a whole lot of happiness. Thank you.
Senator Cory Booker. Well, that redefined what work in the room means, right? One of the states that has really been marred with voter suppression is the state of North Carolina. And one that we have been in and out of federal court dealing with the ways they've tried to undermine voters there. One that has stood up on that, as well as serves on the Committee on Education and Workforce, the Agriculture Committee, Small Business Committee, and was the founder of the first ever bipartisan HBCU caucus. From the 12th District in North Carolina, Congresswoman Alma Adams.
Thank you. God bless you. Good afternoon. I am so very pleased to be here with the National Action Network as we collectively turn from demonstration into legislation. I do bring you greetings from the marvelous 12th District in North Carolina, Charlotte, Mecklenburg, and to say from all of my people there how grateful we are for Dr. Sharpton and this network for the wonderful work that you continue to do. I do want to thank and recognize all of our hosts and our guests and my colleagues as well from the not only the Legislative Black Caucus, but from the Congress. You know, you were reminded a little while ago that the Congressional Black Caucus is rightfully so considered and talked about and described as the conscience of the Congress. Well, I'm proud to be here today at the invitation of the National Action Network, the conscience of our nation. You know, we have a lot to discuss and a lot to get prepared for. We saw the results last Tuesday. That blue wave came in and knocked the hell out of that red wall. And for the first time, you know, since I've been in Washington, the Democratic Party in Congress will now be able to lead an agenda that promotes education as the key tool to achieving social economic mobility. We now have not only an opportunity, but a responsibility to increase access to a quality education, ensuring that neither race nor gender, nor religion, nor ethnicity or sexual orientation or citizenship, criminal record, nor circumstances of birth act as an impediment. You are not your circumstance. You know, one of my favorite quotes by the great W.E.B. Du Bois, who said of all of the civil rights for which the world has struggled and fought for more than 500 years, the right to learn is undoubtedly the most fundamental. And I love that quote because it first and foremost puts education in the context of a civil rights agenda. You know, it lays out simple and plain that education is one of those rights that must be protected and promoted by lawmakers, by advocates such as you, by this network, by administrators, and anyone who believes in true equality. And I truly believe in this principle because I've seen it personal and up close. the kind of impact of a first-class education has had on my life. I came from humble beginnings. My mom, who raised me, was not an educated woman formally. She did domestic work. She cleaned other folks' houses so I wouldn't have to, but she was a smart woman, and she knew how important education would be for me and how far it would take me as far as my dreams would take. And even when I wasn't prepared for the rigors of a college curriculum, my school in North Carolina A&T State University, invested in me and molded me and shaped me into what they knew I could become. That is the true power of education. It's an investment that our society makes in its citizenry. And as Benjamin Franklin said, it's an investment that pays the best interest. It's also an investment that we in government play a role in guaranteeing is available and affordable. And over the course of the 115th Congress, we've seen a negligent unwillingness to invest in our children and our public schools. Instead, we've seen an agenda to roll back our progress and to place a quality education more and more out of reach. You know, we saw a Higher Education Act reauthorization proposal by the Republican majority, which eliminated many of the grant and loan programs that our students depend on. And we saw a single-minded focus to provide for private school vouchers as a fix to our K-12 education system, and even a willingness to take funding used to educate low-income students and allow school districts to buy guns. You know, this was not an agenda dedicated to seeing education be the ticket out of poverty into the middle class. But January, it dawns a brand new day. You know, we will once again have a Congress that will pay our teachers what they're worth. We will once again have a Congress who will be concerned about not only education, but seriously about the infrastructure and the needs of many of our older schools. A Congress that keeps our students safe while they're in the classroom. A Congress that keeps alive the promise that a quality education is given to every child. And so I want to close, by saying that after teaching 40 years at Bennett College in Greensboro, North Carolina, people continue to ask me, Reverend Sharpton, do I miss teaching? And I tell them, well, I miss my students. But I have an opportunity to teach here in the Congress each and every day. Because sometimes we don't know what we don't know and what we need to know. So I want to close to repeat a quote that I believe drives home the point of what we're fighting for. And it says that slavery is one of the worst forms of violence, as in the denial of education. And education is key to liberating children from slavery. And now we know throughout our shared history that this was literally true. But it also relates to a slavery that we still fight for today more than ever. It's a slavery of poverty. Poverty is one of our society's greatest ills. It's in a nation of so much, it's a shame to have so many with so little. And it's even more of a shame for some of our lawmakers to literally blame those in poverty for their circumstance. You are not your circumstance. Poverty dims hope, it hinders progress, and it destroys dreams. But however we know that this cycle of despair, we can shine a ray of light and a ray of hope and that promise of a quality education. Education has the ability to make progress possible. It has the ability to make no dream seem too big. Saying pull yourself up by your own bootstraps, well, education is that bootstrap. Even in poverty, education can provide hope. And no one, I repeat, no one has the right to take that hope away from any child. So National Action Network, members of Congress, to all of the allies across the spectrum, let's pledge ourselves to fulfilling our shared mission. And let's make education not a privilege of the wealthy, but a right of the whole. Because anything less is a betrayal of our shared values, and it's a betrayal of our future. Thank you so very much. God bless you.
That's great. Thank you. Congresswoman Alma Adams. She's a fighter for consumers, fighter against sexual assault, fighter for health care, first woman to represent New York's 12th district, first woman to chair the Joint Economic Committee, senior member of both House Financial Services and the ranking member of the Joint Economic Committee. Let us welcome a woman that I know has stood and fought for civil rights, whether it was the 2nd Avenue subway or whether it was census. Congresswoman from New York, Congresswoman Carolyn Maloney.
Thank you, Reverend Al. And we are so proud to have Reverend Al Sharpton in New York, and he always speaks right, always fights for social justice. And what I like about him, he gets the job done. He doesn't just talk about it, he moves it off the table into the ground and makes it happen. So I want to thank him for everything he does. And when we get back to Washington, where we're now and we have the majority, we're going to save that health care. We're going to get the minimum wage up to $15. We're going to fight for infrastructure and integrity in government. But I want to interpret it down to what it means to Harlem, the district he lives in and represents. We have built the 2nd Avenue subway up to 96th Street. It now has to go up to 125th Street. So that should be a priority of all of us to make sure that the 2nd Avenue provides the quality of life, the jobs, the infrastructure that Harlem so justly deserves and needs. So let's all join hands and support him in pushing this and making it happen.
All right, I want to dip out of this conference right now that's happening live in D.C. Again, Democrats, leading Democrats and lawmakers talking about civil rights and the movement here in America. We're going to kind of be in and out, but I want to jump down to Florida, where Nicholas Cruz is making another courtroom appearance. Take a look.
Barrick has the stamp over there.
I've prepared it already, Judge.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. May I approach with the order?
Absolutely.
Thank you, Judge.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Your Honor, we would also have to be provisionally appointed to Mr. Cruz.
Granted.
Thank you, Judge.
Thank you. Granted.
Thank you, Your Honor.
You're welcome. Did you not hear me?
And I did not hear you, Judge, and I would also invoke his rights under the 5th, 6th, and 14th Amendments at this point.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. All right, let's go off the record just for one moment. Is Mr. Romero, is he there? Do you need additional time?
They're coming in, Judge. Should be quick.
All right, do you need time to?
5 minutes. Just 5 minutes.
All right, so we'll go off.
Thank you.
Relationship we have, and they're actually correct.
Like so many breakups in life, theirs also appears to have been because of money.
We want to help Europe, but it has to be fair. Right now, the burden sharing has been largely on the United States.
But France's unwillingness to fund NATO at the suggested 2% level of GDP before 2024 isn't the only factor driving a wedge between Presidents Trump and Macron, men who at one point appeared as close as any of the world's leaders.
Nationalism is a betrayal of patriotism.
Macron's public criticism of Mr. Trump's idea of nationalism and the suggestion that Europe needs to build an army to protect itself from, among others, the U.S., well, that was simply one punch too many. Today, the American president came out swinging, noting on Twitter that it wasn't the U.S., China, or Russia that attacked France. It was Germany in World Wars I and II. How did that work out for France? It was starting to learn German in Paris before the U.S. came along. Pay for NATO or not. Later, tweets about unfair trade and Macron's low approval ratings set up the president's ultimate right hook: make France great again. Whether the tweets hit below the belt depends on your perspective, but from any angle, the president's relationship with some of Europe's most prominent leaders has become increasingly threadbare. German Chancellor Angela Merkel, a frequent target of Mr. Trump's criticism for lack of NATO funding, agreed with Macron's suggestion that now may be the time for a well-funded European army. Ironic, considering that's what NATO is supposed to be, an alliance which hasn't seen Germany or France live up to their respective financial obligations for years. NATO officials believe that by the end of the year, 8 member nations, including the U.S., will meet that 2% target. And while it may not sound like much, 8 out of 29 NATO countries, keep this in mind, only 3 met the 2% target back in 2014. At the White House, I'm Kevin Cork, Fox News.
We typically see some staff churn within any administration, especially after a midterm election, but for the White House, the turnover has been extremely high.
Very impressive group.
It was all smiles last night at the White House as the president helped celebrate Diwali. But take a look at the woman over the president's left shoulder. That is Mira Ricardel, the Deputy National Security Advisor. And her days in the administration may be numbered. She apparently clashed a number of times with First Lady Melania Trump and her staff over a number of travel issues. In fact, the First Lady's office even put out this statement. It is the position of the office of the First Lady that she, Ricardel, no longer deserves the honor of serving in this White House.
For her to come out publicly and say this is really says something about the relationship that this particular staffer clearly has with the East Wing. And I would think that this wasn't the first rodeo or encounter that they had. You've got to have really worn out your welcome.
Other possible departures are even higher up and could involve Chief of Staff John Kelly, Secretary of Homeland Security Kirstjen Nielsen, and Commerce Secretary Wilbur Ross. If so, they would join a growing list of White House officials and staffers who have departed the administration, an unusual rate of turnover.
The other thing that makes us different in kind is that often when people leave, it's because they're wore out, they're tired, or they feel that they have completed their mission. A lot of these changes seem to be because of unhappiness the president has with specific members of the cabinet.
Now, if these departures take place, replacing these people will not be easy, especially those cabinet positions that require Senate confirmation. In Washington, Doug Luzader, Fox News.
A new Senate will mean new faces in some new places. Senate GOP leadership will largely remain the same, with Mitch McConnell leading the majority. The one exception is Whip John Cornyn will be leaving that role due to term limits, and South Dakota's John Thune is expected to be the new whip.
Obviously, the whip in the Senate, you try and make sure that you win votes. And so my job is to try and work with our members. It's really about helping the team succeed.
Wyoming's John Barrasso will advance to become the new chairman of the Senate Republican Conference. And Missouri's Roy Blunt will take over Barrasso's post as chairman of the Republican Policy Committee. Then Iowa's Joni Ernst and Nebraska's Deb Fischer are competing to fill Blunt's old job as vice chair of the GOP conference. Gone will be President Trump's fiercest GOP critics Bob Corker and Jeff Flake. The question is what role former Republican presidential nominee Mitt Romney will play as the new senator from Utah.
We had a good meeting this morning with the leader and spoke about not only issues but personnel matters and leadership matters.
And conservative Republicans will be replacing Democrats in Missouri, North Dakota, and Indiana. In terms of committee chairs, sources expect Chuck Grassley will announce he's going back to lead Senate Finance, opening an opportunity for South Carolina's Lindsey Graham to chair Judiciary. Graham signaled during the Kavanaugh confirmation battle that he intends to be much tougher if he holds the gavel.
If you want to vet the nominee, you can. If you want to delay things for the next election, you will not. If you try to destroy somebody, you will not get away with it.
On the Democratic side, Chuck Schumer will continue as their leader and will have some new faces in Kyrsten Sinema from Arizona and Jackie Rosen from Nevada. But Schumer's new reality will be a number of his senators running for president. Cory Booker, Sherrod Brown, Kirsten Gillibrand, Kamala Harris, Amy Klobuchar, Bernie Sanders, and Elizabeth Warren, which some have joked could create an attendance problem for Schumer.
There will be some who are interested in running for president. But so far, it hasn't stood in the way of our caucus unity or getting whatever we have to get done as a caucus.
I'm told we should expect an announcement soon from Senator Grassley about if he intends to switch to Senate Finance.
Aides say he is speaking to his colleagues this week. On Capitol Hill, Mike Emanuel, Fox News.
The state of Maryland is challenging Matt Whitaker's appointment as acting attorney general. The legal challenge comes as part of an existing Obamacare-related lawsuit. Quote, the appointment of Whitaker as acting attorney general instead of Deputy Attorney General Rosenstein violates the Attorney General Succession Act, as well as the Appointments Clause of the Constitution. Analysts are divided over whether President Trump has the authority to appoint Whitaker as a principal officer who is not Senate confirmed.
Yes, within certain limits. However, the question is whether he also qualifies under the Constitution, and that's a much closer call.
If the Justice Department is going to take action that affects Maryland, it's got to be done in a constitutionally proper way. They don't get to pick who the Attorney General is.
No question. The President and the Department of Justice leadership has confidence in Matt Whitaker.
The administration says the appointment is proper.
He has a full and legal authority under the Vacancy Reform Act of 1998, where if it's someone that's been a senior official as well as has been there for more than 90 days, could serve as acting attorney general.
Returning to Capitol Hill, Democrats ramped up the attacks.
No significant actions under Whitaker's authority should be taken at the department.
The Judiciary Committee's ranking Democrat Dianne Feinstein called for emergency hearings with Whitaker and former Attorney General Jeff Sessions. The committee's Republican chairman, who controls the calendar and knows Whitaker from Iowa politics, pointed to the ongoing Justice Department ethics review.
Doesn't matter what the Democrats think. If he's going through that process, that's going to answer that question.
Do you have any concerns about the comments that Whitaker has made about the Mueller probe, and also
as long as he made him as a private citizen, no.
Sources familiar with the process tell Fox News the Justice Department's Office of Legal Counsel plans to issue an opinion defending the Whitaker appointment and pushing back strongly against legal analysis that the appointment is unconstitutional. Sources said the opinion is expected in the coming days, possibly as early as Wednesday. In Washington, Catherine Herridge, Fox News.
If you're looking for a job, it's safe to say the numbers are looking merry and bright for holiday hiring.
If anybody that has a pulse could get a job in this town, I mean, there's so many openings.
The labor market is so tight. Retailers like Macy's and Target started hiring their holiday help last July. Holiday hiring plans are impressive. Amazon planned to hire 100,000, Target 120,000, Macy's 80,000 holiday helpers. The National Retail Federation estimates retailers could be looking to hire 650,000 seasonal holiday employees this year. That's roughly 10% up from last year's holiday workforce. Hayes says holiday workers should ask for something extra in their stockings this year.
It's a seller's market. If I'm an employee, I can pretty much do what I ask for what I want. If I don't get it, I'll just go down the street. And that's kind of what they do.
Hayes says, of course, you have to stay within reason, but he says companies are discovering they have to come up with more perks for all employees, including holiday help.
A lot of the stores, they give you discounts, so people are thinking, wow, that might be a good idea. But you're still going to be working on Christmas Eve, New Year's Eve, all those others, Black Friday, yeah.
Linda Williams, Fox 10 News.
And to correct it. That's how you hold us accountable. So I want to make sure that we do that. Then I want to be able to say that the Mueller investigation must go forward. I think most of you have heard of Mr. Mueller, but in the time frame that he has received this appointment as head of this investigation, you have not heard from him. That is the appropriate role that Mr. Mueller is supposed to adhere to. If you go into history books, you probably didn't hear a lot from Leon Jaworski. You'd have to look and see who was that. You might have heard of Barbara Jordan and Charlie Rangel, not only because he represented you, but he was on the committee, 1974 impeachment. Those are the persons who speak, but the investigators do their work. Right. And so to adhere to the rule of law, you need to be saying in offices, I know that you're supporting the completion of the Mueller report. that is crucial for this Congress. That is what the blue wave is, and we must clarify what the blue wave is. The blue wave was the American people who rejected being diminished. They rejected the idea that they did not count. Because as you realize, there was a whole lot of analysis in the weeks before, maybe 2-3 weeks out, that nothing was going to happen. That one cause was overriding our blue wave. It didn't look like we were going to do anything. But I always believe in the silent folk. The folk locked down in rural communities, in the corners of Harlem and beyond. And then those who joined with us in the suburbs. And then young brothers and sisters of black and brown and white and South Asian all came together and created a rejection of the misuse and abuse of the Constitution and the rule of law. So we have to carry that forward. You go into an office and start talking about the rule of law, they might get up out of that chair. Because most of us come in and we want to help with public housing and we want to help which is viable. Let me make sure that you add that we want a $70 billion funding for public housing. Put that number in your head, $70 billion for public housing. You just get that, on the docket, you'll be okay. Because that's what we're moving toward. $1 trillion+ for infrastructure. That's an important number to realize as well. But in the course of your visiting, that rule of law is crucial. Now let me get to some of the specifics, and I will leave you because I know you've got to do your important work. Do you not? Yeah. I do want to say to you that we are blessed in the Congressional Black Caucus to have elected at least 6 new CBC members, many of whom represent majority districts, meaning they are districts that are mostly Caucasian and Texas Anglo. We're proud of that. Because what we've always said is that the Congressional Black Caucus is the conscience, but we are representing America. Don't diminish us. Our constituents are a wide array of individuals, and we seek to find common ground to represent them in the appropriate manner. It does not mean because I am ancestrally connected to slaves that I cannot represent people from all backgrounds. I think you have representatives from all backgrounds. We must insist on that. Remember, we have 2020. We don't know who's going to wind up running. But we must again say, it's all right to have another one. Say that with me. It's all right to have another one. You guys know what I'm saying? It's all right to have another one. But we will work for the best, for the presidency of the United States. And so you keep that going as he's got it right. So let me give you these 3 points and let you know. Voting rights, you have got to continue to insist, and I won't call the bill names because you've got that, but continue to insist, restore Section 5. Once you do that, you get all the bills. Restore Section 5, restore Section 5, because we would not have had Georgia, and the purging would not have occurred, because we had no armor. We had no armor, because Section 5 requires a pre-clearance. And so when Kemp decided to weed out, to dismantle, to insult, to eliminate your birthright by purging you off of a roll of which you were on. And you know, in the faith community, is your name written there? That's important to us. And so that would not have happened if we had Section 5, which is pre-clearance, which lawyers would have gone in, and I can assure you the Justice Department, no matter who's in charge, could not have affirmed the removal of 50,000+ people in Georgia. You know those votes. Is that not correct? Right. You know those votes. That's number 1. Number 2, Florida did it. We will hold hearings, and I'd like to do it on judiciary. It's to restore federally the rights of ex-felons to vote. We just did it in Florida. That's a good sign. That means that we can have hearings and you can be supported to be able, we'll get facts. Let me be very clear. We're fact-based. We're legislators. That anyone who's listening, they're talking, let it be very clear. Hearings for people to come and testify on whether or not there is danger or whether or not there is empowerment. That's how we do our work. Let it be very clear. So the restoration of rights. Is that all right? Yes. Then I want to reform the juvenile justice system. You all have been mighty about that. You know, when I start doing that, people say, well, you know, this state, guys, you don't need to do it this state. We are the bully pulpit. I met Caleb's mother before she passed. I think you all know who I'm talking about. That was in Rikers Island. The young man that lost his life because he was in solitary confinement. We introduced the legislation when she was still alive. Yes. And we want to eliminate, if anybody's even thinking about putting a juvenile in solitary confinement, we want to eliminate it. So that is federal legislation. We want to eliminate solitary confinement. We want to ban the box for juveniles so that they are not wedded to what happened as a young person. That means ban the box means you don't have to say you were arrested. You're trying to go to college. You're going to vocational. You don't have to do that. And then lastly, to find alternative places for juveniles to go other than a place like Rikers or a federal system. Now let me be clear. We know there are situations that involve violence in juveniles. We are recognizing that. And we will have a response to how you do that with one population versus another. I don't want anybody to hear us and say, you see what they're up there talking about? And so let me quickly go on. It is shameful that I am worshiping in my synagogue, or worshiping in Mother Emanuel, or in a prayer service in Kentucky, but the door was locked, that I might be subjected to not only hatred, but guns. I'm not here to take your guns away. You might be hunters. You might be doing it for sport. I'm here to protect the Second Amendment, but to realistically deal with the question of massive gun violence in this nation, including those innocent young people shot in California. We have got to be able to come together, and the numbers, the polling numbers, say that they are ready for us to be smart about guns and about automatics and bump stocks. So listen out for us. You can say rule of law and ask the question, do you want this bloodshed to continue? And help us bring up the 70% and 65% who are supporting across the nation dealing with this gun violence. So let me come to a close. We're now looking at prison reform. I know that you've heard that, but we have been coming out of President Obama's administration. Many of you remember how he commuted a number of people. That was a miracle. He did it because we could not get the sentencing reduction legislation that we wanted passed, and he just sat there. Now, he didn't do it without the process. He had a team of lawyers, and they were signing to change lives. We want to, in this coming Congress, and I need you just to keep saying over and over again, we may have something buzzing right now, but let me just keep you focused on criminal justice reform will include a continuation of prison reform and sentencing reduction. That those who are on mandatory minimums and were in for 20, 30, 40 years on nonviolent drug offenses need to come under a revised system that is not a pardon, or you got to wait for a long process. You have a process to come out because of the excessiveness of your sentence. You remember the crack cocaine, where we weren't treating it as a disease, we were just locking them up. We've got to get families back together. Don't you think so? Families back together, and I think that is. So let me say this last word on the reauthorization of the Violence Against Women Act, which impacts all of us. Because we made it people. Men are listening to me? We made it people. That we want to protect homes, we want to protect people. And so in the Violence Against Women Act, if you've been abused in your home, we want you to be protected. We're not looking to look at any group versus another. We're protecting Native American women, who you may not know. You can perpetrate something there and run off, and they have no jurisdiction on you. You run off of the reservation. How sad. Immigrant women, you could be a Haitian and just come to town, or like my heritage, come from Jamaica, West Indies, and you are not protected. Come from South and Central America, or the continent of Africa, you're not protected. And so we wanted to be those who dignify all people. They're in the boundaries of the United States. So help us pass 6545, the Violence Against Women Act. But more importantly, let me just cite these numbers. We would increase spending on the Violence Against Women Act $100 million. Rape prevention, we give you another $150 million. Creating hope through outreach, options, services, and education for children and youth choose. We give you another $25 million. Grants to combat violent crimes on campus. $16 million. Saving money, reducing tragedies through prevention. The SMART, $45 million. I say that because we don't apply for these grants. This is money that you could apply for in your community. Your churches and 501c3, National Action Network can apply for this kind of funding. Housing protection for victims of domestic violence, dating violence, sexual assault, and stalking so they don't get thrown out of their apartment. That would be $20 million. You could do a housing program, grant for National Resource Center on workforce responses, $2 million. And law enforcement getting the DNA kit, those monies will be plussed up. We're serious legislators here, but you are serious people. Yes. And so I'm standing before serious people to let you know that we expect to be held accountable, but we need to work 2 and 2 together to make sure that we can pass legislation that has an overwhelming impact on your lives. You voted, and we should now be in place to ensure that we protect health care and fight against any elimination that insurance would not cover pre-existing conditions. Medicaid and Social Security, it sounds like a broken record, but it is important when others think it should not be passed. An infrastructure bill that will ensure that if you flood in Puerto Rico and Houston, you're treated the same, and places beyond. If you need transportation, we give it to you. If you want a criminal justice system that dignifies you and law enforcement, of which many of you have relatives who are law enforcement persons, we want to do that with the Law Enforcement Trust and Integrity Bill, giving funding for professionalizing these departments. There are 18,000 across the nation, and what we see when a brother loses his life, racial profiling, is that it goes to the crux of training. And so we're willing to extend a hand, an olive branch, and say, we want to give you police departments funding to work with the community and to deal with professionalizing and training. What did I say? We mean business, we are professional legislators. Only because you have made us so, not for anything that we've done on our own. I leave you simply with the fact that guns are going to have to be addressed because I believe in stopping the bleeding and saving lives. I'm not afraid of doing what is the impossible. Voting rights has been perceived as the impossible. I'm not afraid of doing what is the impossible. Protecting women and men has been perceived as being impossible. I'm not afraid of doing the impossible. And giving dignity to those who come as immigrants to this land has been perceived as the impossible and to demonize. And I believe that when we are serious professional legislators working with an organization, the National Action Network, who comes to this place to be as citizens living and walking amongst the buildings of which our ancestors built, standing on hollow ground, that we are serious Americans looking to do what is good for all of America. And if we do what is good for all of America, we will stand in this bright sun. I said I was closing, but I had to give you this one bill, and I had to give it to you. I had to give it to you after I said that about we're one America. We had a bill that has been introduced over the years, H.R. 40. There's a young man that stopped me about it. And so I want to say that I am proud to take up that bill now. It is a bill that addresses the word reparation. People have failed to hear what we're saying. They immediately begin to say that we're on the non-professional side of legislation. But let me explain, and I would not put the Reverend on the spot, but I would love to hold a hearing in New York on H.R. 40. H.R. 40 is a commission. A commission. Do we need facts? Yeah. Do we need to understand what happened in slavery and the aftermath? What was the economic engine that was invested by all of us and our ancestors, no matter whether you came from different places, you wound up here now? It is a historical effort to be able to work through many of the questions that have been raised. I believe that America will be a better land when all of us who come from different places, whether you are the Polish who are trying to understand your history, or whether you are people who came because of fleeing the Holocaust, whether or not you have fled the murderous conditions of South and Central America, or whether or not you have fled oppression and have come from warring communities in the Mideast and Syria, sometimes on the continent, you need to come, and in Europe during World War I and II, we need to understand our history. And so I leave you with the idea that no one should shame anyone on the basis of wanting to ask the question of how we can be better in this nation. For this nation is looked upon as that shining nation on the hill. And you must hold us accountable in this hollow place where we are entrusted to pass laws that will make America better. You are obviously my bosses across the nation, and my commitment to you is that if you allow me to be Sheila Jackson Lee, we will in fact do the job of the American people, regardless of their region, regardless of their race and ethnicity and religion, regardless of their opposition or support. We will do what is best for America. Thank you all.
Sheila Jackson Lee. We're all going to lunch. Then you have your assignments for visits. Stop at the front desk in the lobby. You heard a lot today as you did yesterday. Now let's go and do the visits and make it happen. And that is why we're here. Let me say also, I want to do something special here in the Senate office building. And that is, for many years now, we have been blessed to have one that has been faithful and loyal to building the brand of this organization. And today is her birthday, Rachel Nordlinger. And we want, right here in the halls of the Senate, Congresswoman, to wish Rachel a happy birthday. Stand up, Rachel. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Rachel. Happy birthday. So if all of y'all do your visits, you might get some birthday cake. All right.
I'll call you about the hearing.
Yeah, let's do that. I'd love to do that. HR 40, yeah, I'd love it. All right, thank you.
You'd be at this time.
Yeah, New York.
Fill it up.
Tonight and plans to attend Senate Republican leadership votes tomorrow. Too soon to say whether he and opponent Senator Bill Nelson cross paths, but they continue with their cross words. Nelson, accompanied by Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer, repeated his mantra, every vote must count.
Sadly, it's become clear that my opponent isn't interested in making sure that every lawful vote is counted. He's thrown around words like voter fraud with no proof.
Schumer even suggested that state-mandated deadlines for completing the recount should be eliminated. No wonder why.
The more time that passes since Election Day, the better things keep looking for Democrats.
It's the same reason Governor Scott's team has filed 6 lawsuits to date, all broadly intended to stem the flood of late contested votes, most coming from heavily Democratic Broward and Palm Beach counties.
We have a trust issue in this county. We have a trust issue in this process, and we need to do something now before it is too late.
Pressure continues to build on Broward and Palm Beach's supervisors of elections, Brenda Snipes and Susan Booker. The president tweeting today, quote, "When will Bill Nelson concede in Florida? The characters running Broward and Palm Beach voting will not be able to, quote, find enough votes. Too much spotlight on them now." A day after former Florida Republican Governor Jeb Bush called for Snipes be removed from her office following the recounts, she hinted at removing herself while complimenting herself for a job well done.
But it is time to move on to let someone else provide a credible election product for our voters.
Today revealed more irregularities. The Miami Herald reported it has been deluged with absentee voter calls from Broward, Palm Beach, and Miami-Dade counties, complaining of ballots, quote, not arriving late, being returned but apparently getting lost in the mail, or not tabulated well after Election Day. While that plays out, the unofficial winner in the governor's race, Ron DeSantis, is setting up a transition office in the state capitol and is sending out pictures to prove it.
And late today, lawyers for the Senator Nelson campaign filed a lawsuit in federal court seeking to indefinitely extend the deadline for the recount in all 67 Florida counties. A spokesman for Governor Scott calls that outrageous and notes that the Supreme Court has affirmed such deadlines. In Tallahassee, Florida, Doug McElway, Fox News. Late today, lawyers for the Senator Nelson campaign
and more than 25,000 new high-paying jobs over the coming decade with room to grow. And I'm here to confirm that New York will be home to one of Amazon's new headquarters and more than 25,000 new high-paying jobs over the coming decade with room to grow. I'd like
Amazon making it official. An HQ2 is coming here to Vernon Boulevard in Long Island City, Queens.
In many ways, this is a perfect location, and there's a lot happening in Queens.
This will be the site of a 6 million to 8 million square foot headquarters, a tech startup incubator, public green space, and a public school.
This is up to a $3.6 billion investment by Amazon, 25,000 to 40,000 direct jobs, average salary of over $150,000, but there are then indirect jobs that are always created. That's estimated 107,000 jobs. Total economic impact, $186 billion.
The state is offering performance-based incentives and tax credits that could top $1.7 billion if Amazon does in fact create 40,000 jobs. Governor Cuomo calling the return on investment unprecedented.
The revenue to incentive ratio is 9-to-1. That is the highest rate of return for an economic incentive program that the state has ever offered.
Mayor de Blasio calling this a major financial win for New York City as well.
The city alone, we project $13.5 billion in tax revenues over 25 years.
In the first year, Amazon has committed to 700 new jobs, attracted to New York City because of its strong pool of software developers. But the mayor says this will create jobs for everyone, from union construction workers to current students.
We're going to have an opportunity here for tens of thousands of New Yorkers, everyday New Yorkers, kids who come up through our public schools, kids who go to our community colleges and our four-year colleges to have opportunity at Amazon.
All right, so lots of numbers there pointing to the good, positive reaction to Amazon coming to New York, but not everyone is happy with this tech titan moving in. You can scroll back in the stream for some of those protests that were happening live this morning. People protesting, city organizers protesting this giant corporation coming to Queens. So you guys can be the deciders for yourself, of course. We're going to hang on and look at some other top stories, and then Sam will be coming up next with some other weather updates from our meteorologists about tomorrow's possible snow/sleet in the early morning. So we'll take a look at that in a little bit here on the live stream.